Why is everything so different? I don't understand. Well, welcome to the new year.
Are we live?
Supposedly.
Okay. Well, welcome
Is
to
that your phone saying that we just went live?
probably. Welcome to Burnout Studios. Yeah, and Happy New Year.
Yep, says we're live.
The
Oh goodness.
we've I don't want to say we completely rewrote it because we didn't. I believe we finished the first book of Town Called Liberty. The words itself, not the all the artwork, because that's in progress. But we're so close. One of the things that I thought I would do today is because we actually collaborated on this, and Bruce did a little writing of his own, and that I added into the story, and so, and also at the very beginning of the story, it talks about the sign leading into Liberty, and we changed what the sign looked like, and so anyway, I'm going to be reading from two different stories that I kind of have written and melding them together so we can give you an idea of what the story is.
Okay. I think I might doodle while you're doing that then.
Right. So, I mean,
Unless you want to. Well, it's been a couple weeks.
I mean, you can show the people as we're going through. You can show the viewers the picture that goes along with it and what you're working on.
Oh, I can show that one drawing that I did.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't nothing overly special. It was just.
No, but it kind of shows what we're going with the
So here,
the sign.
Why don't I do this really quick? I'm gonna switch over. I'm gonna lose Marty for a second.
I'm gone.
Then we'll get
Oh,
him
I'm
back.
back. I'm back. Yay.
Alright, now here we go. I'm gonna open.
Mm-hmm.
Town Called Liberty.
Do, do,
I'm
do.
open it as the comic. And what's kind of cool is we're gonna cover it up a little bit, but
Yes, but we have to show our beautiful faces. Oh, that's loading. Mm-hmm.
finally got the new computer built. It's quiet. And I can still hear it, but not as loud as the last one.
Right.
It's so nice.
Yeah.
So there's 84, well that's 90 pages, but that's, but would allow me eventually to do is I can, even though it shows page 1 up there, page 2, 3, whatever, I'll be able to move those and be able to do like inside front cover,
Right.
dust jacket type, inside stuff like that. So we can do all like the acknowledgments page, the publishing page, credits, stuff like that, and then post credits and things.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be able to have like a page when you open the hardback or the softback, whatever, hardback, and have a picture on the inside.
That'd be cool.
But this is the image he was talking about. I jumped way ahead over here, and I had
Oh, wow.
drawn.
Yeah.
And so what's cool about this, the way the program is set up with Clip Studio, and being able to have the whole book out like that, you can actually see the whole book laid out,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can just jump from page to page. I can insert a page whenever needed, blah blah. And so I have 2 licenses of this.
Mm-hmm.
And what I can do is I can give you the second license,
Mm-hmm.
and then with access to my cloud
Mm-hmm.
thing, then you'll be able to. I was thinking you could go in and add the text
Right.
in the places,
Mm-hmm.
and do that part of it,
Right.
and I can just draw. I'll be able to over. It's not showing up there, but the in the layers over on the side over here, I can just put like a general like box, like
Right.
this is where I think the text should go, type thing. And then you can eventually too, if you wanted to, get to the point where you could draw boxes eventually and be like, I think text should go here, here, as I
Mm-hmm.
get farther into it.
Right.
But this was just an idea I had. There's a scene when our protagonist is talking to the obstacles in the way and whatever. And I don't even know if this is gonna be a actually in there. Yeah, this was just a thought idea.
Mm.
It was just when we were talking before we got started about how Marty writes dialogue, and he was noticing that I was writing all these hand movements,
Scenes. Yeah.
maybe the feeling of the scene too. Sometimes, like I would
Right.
like whether or not the guy was intense, if he was.
Mm-hmm.
You get that. You get a lot of that from Marty's writing,
Mm-hmm.
just from the words. But I wanted to. There's like there's one specific scene like where Brzezinski's at the front of the car,
Mm-hmm.
and then as he moves and comes towards John, I wanted John to think of him like a big cat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I
And I couldn't figure out how to say that right. I couldn't get it to come out right. But it was like, I wanted him to know that he was
Mm-hmm.
in the wrong place. There's a writer that I read a long time ago who talked about special forces guys.
Mm-hmm.
And he talked about them, they're like sharks. And anytime you have all these soldiers, whatever, and these special forces guys come in the room,
Mm-hmm.
there's a whole different way how they move through their environment, whatever. It's like you could tell that they were alpha predators, and even in the monks of all these other soldiers and stuff, but there was just something different about them. There was just something I was like, I want him to be scary. I wanted these two guys to be scary.
Yeah.
Not
Even though they work for a company called Help.
Right. I didn't want to just be mean.
Right.
I guess that's 3-4 podcasts back we went round and around about why would he use the F word? Why
Right.
would he just cuss? Because to me that was just mean language,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just being mean to be mean.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see them as mean. I see them as scary.
Right.
And when you don't, the least you talk, it seems like the scarier you can be, because you don't know
Yeah.
who they are, what they are, why they're there.
Mm.
So
Right.
plus I was trying to mimic
Do you have that first scene?
I didn't put her thing on here.
Who?
The first scene.
Yeah. The pyramid thing that you had drawn. Yeah.
See, this is kind of cool too, because this allows me to bring up both pages at the same time
Right.
instead of just. Oh, you can't see the. I was trying to think that they can see the audio
Oh
picture.
no, they can't.
You
I
can't
hope
see-
they. I hope they can't see that.
At least I don't think you can see. Nope.
Dun, 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 dun.
Hey, look, we got one viewer. Me.
That's funny. All right.
Crap.
So here's what I had written for that first scene there.
Okay.
The sign was big and bold, visible for miles before entering Liberty. The sign was pure light. The single word Liberty was written across the sky in lasers. The beams blasted out of the top of a massive pyramid. The monorail rocketed past the sign, leaving the woodlands, headed over a small hill and down into the city built along the coastline. And then it goes on to the next scene with Samantha. So, going to Samantha here. Samantha pressed her face against the glass, staring out at the city as it zoomed closer. She beamed at her parents, seated on the train next to her. Her parents, Benjamin and Hillary, looked on her with pride. They admired the new blue sundress they had bought her. Her fluffy afro was separated into pigtails, making 2 fluffy pom-poms on her head. The train's audio and visual sprang to life, and their admiration of Samantha, interrupting their admiration of Samantha. My fellow Americans, I stand before you today truly proud of what we have accomplished. Today is a historic day, but not only for Liberty City. Today is a day for celebration, a celebration for the world. Many years ago, a promise was made. The promise was to care for our Mother Earth. It began as a movement. Like all great movements, it started small. People began recycling campaigns. People started to carpool. People started using less plastic and styrofoam. Next scene.
Well, I don't have all those yet on here.
Well, you have Samantha, right?
Oh.
There's Samantha and her pom-poms on her head. Shoppers glanced for a moment as the train passed by and came to a stop in a station located in the heart of the shopping district. People crowded the shopping mall, moving from one shop to another, busy enjoying the families and friends accompanying them. The radio system at the mall continued playing the broadcast. Many states began to change the law based on the thoughtful, selfless actions of its citizens. Then, over time, a fundamental shift in the way people think happened. People everywhere stopped caring only about themselves, and they began to recognize we must care for all life on this planet. We must stop the pollution. We must stop the torture of the animals we share this world with. And we must, at all costs, begin treating the environment as the fragile beauty that it is. Maria looked out from her balcony as she sipped her morning coffee. The world below her apartment was already moving at a fast pace. The monorail was dropping off people, and all the shops were open for business. "I'm headed out for a jog," Maria's husband, Juan, exclaimed. He kissed Maria on the cheek and bolted out the door.
Well, wait a second.
What happened? Are you going to work on Samantha? What's the matter? Is your pen not calibrated or something?
Well, I had added all these
The extra stuff?
brushes into this, and now...
Oh. But it is the pen? Or the...
Well, no, I mean, I added these extra ones to use,
Mm-hmm.
and now they're gone. I'm so tired of this.
Why would it disappear, or is it just because it was the older computer?
Because I would want it to work.
Well, that's a good way to look at things.
Well, I transferred everything over, and I had spent the day transferring. I even saved my old workspace
Right.
with everything, so I could just transfer it over or just restore everything.
Mm-hmm.
But when I because I had to, those 2 licenses,
Mm-hmm.
I had to uninstall it off my old system
Mm-hmm.
so that I'd make sure I had 2 licenses.
And reinstall it.
And so I saved it. So when I went to back it up onto here, so I put my whole work space back together again, it wasn't saved anywhere that I could find
Well,
in the materials where I supposedly had saved it. And
well, I'd love to tell you that I know anything about computers and I could help you, but I don't. Huh. My screen is frozen. Anyway, hopefully they can still hear me. I can't even see. Yeah, I can see my voice, I guess.
yeah, you're the audio. You're this one.
All right.
Which is ridiculous because I named them, but I guess whatever.
Okay. Well, continuing on. Maria continued to get ready for the day as her television played. People began to realize they didn't need to live spread about. They recognized the impact the endless housing developments were having on the environment. People began moving into cities to allow the animals to reclaim their precious habitat. But the one most important hazard to the environment was our electrical producing industry. As I said in the beginning, we, the American government, made the people of this great country a promise. We promised to phase out the harmful energy producers such as coal and oil power plants and replace them with cleaner, eco-friendly power plant producers. Wind, solar, hydroelectric offer the world a break from the toxins produced by the traditional power plants. Officer Brett Zern stepped out of his electric vehicle. He scribbled out a parking ticket for the vehicle parked in front of a fire hydrant. He angrily ripped it from his book and placed it on the windshield. His car radio continued. The movement began to grow. People demanded cars that would not pollute. They demanded plastics that would biodegrade. Passengers departed the monorail and either ride escalators to take the stairs down into the mall, or take stairs down into the mall. The video billboard systems flashed through advertisements for the numerous shops waiting in the mall below. They demanded building a monorail system that connected the United States like it had never been connected before. Faster, quieter, safer national travel, but not just for the passengers and the air they breathed, but it was also safer for the animals that lived underneath the raised tracks the train glided upon. Carl sprinted from his car. He was late to his class and ran through the quad in the center of the campus. He understood that college wasn't the same as high school, but he hated being late. The PA system continued the public broadcast throughout the hallways. The transition has not been easy, and the people of the city have been willing to be without power at times. But these sacrifices the people make for the greater good, and when asked, the average person will respond with pride. We must sacrifice for the greater good. John stared dreamily at Beth, who sat one row in front of him and 3 seats to the left. He was a junior now and knew with fair certainty what he wanted to do once he graduated. He even knew who he wanted to be, who he wanted by his side when he started on his life path. He felt lucky that way. Most his age didn't interact with one another outside of school unless it was on a social network or social event. He drifted off into his own world, and now he was going to ask Beth to marry him at the end of the semester. They would start their senior year as one. He would do it on the bluffs overlooking Liberty City. Homemade picnic with John felt his classmate Carl shaking his shoulder. Carl leaned in from the left. He must have just eaten lunch. Carl's words and the odor of onion hit John. Dude, he's about to mention the winner of the essay contest. I bet you won. I just know it. John refocused on the speech on the TV given by the president. The Green campaign is, and I quote, the president proceeded, the single greatest thing I'll ever be a part of. John sat up in his seat. That was the title of his essay. The president continued. A revolving credit system, community sacrifice, and a love for all things great and small. The president paused, swallowed deeply, raised his hand above his eyes, and reverently bowed his head. He held the moment of silence. John couldn't believe it. Did I just win? Those were my ideas. His mind raced a mile a minute. By the way, in that scene, because that was one that you had written, the president paused, swallowed deeply, and raised his hand above his eyes. What is that? Is he saluting?
Kind of it's just like a religious thing, you know?
Oh, okay.
He's taking a pause. Well, half of it is because, you read him like Obama.
Right.
And so I just kind of got that Southern,
right,
that Baptist thing,
Right. John wasn't shocked that the president didn't mention him or the school. He wasn't the only student who was part of the essay writing team. Thousands of students submitted essays in order to raise money for the new green energy campaign. The donations from some of the largest corporations in the world poured in. John didn't think his essay was anything special, but he was excited that he was being rewarded. The president shifted his focus from the cameras and reporters in front of him to the suit-wearing people seated next to the stage. Please, Mayor, will you join me on the stage so I may award you with this token of appreciation? The mayor jolted from the chair he was seated in excitedly, and he moved over to the president. The smile and joy on his face showed his proud moment. Professor Williams exhaled, a genuine sound of amazement. He pushed the button on the remote control in his hands, and the television clicked to black. He turned to face the students, who were beaming with excitement as well. Oh my goodness, wasn't that amazing? The professor exclaimed to the class. I wish the president would have mentioned our school by name, but this is still exciting. As you know, many donations for the contest came in from our most generous providers. Our donations, the Department of Energy at the EPA, was in the form of a semester internship. I have been given the great honor to present this very award. The room buzzed with anticipation. Carl finally shouted out in excitement, "Did we win?" The professor placed the remote on his desk and retrieved a picture frame laying in the middle of his desk. John McDonald. The class erupted in cheers. Will you please come down here? John sat shocked, staring at his teacher holding the plaque. After hearing the president quote his essay, he had a fleeting thought that he might have won, but this was still a shock. I won? It was my words, my ideas. Mine, all mine. He knew if given the opportunity, he could make a difference. This feeling electrified him. As he floated down the stairs, the moment was overwhelming. John and Beth walked through the city on their way home. It was their daily routine to walk home together. John would buy Beth a burger and shake at Rockets. You know, you gave that place a name, and then later in the story, Brzezinski says grill. We should actually change that to rockets.
To rockets.
What Brzezinski says to him.
I thought there was isn't there anything in there? Oh, you just didn't need about him holding the plaque and listening to all the fanfare.
Well, no, there wasn't anything in there, but there was lots of pictures, so
yeah.
We did it with pictures. Then they would talk of the future for both of them as they were leaving the burger and ice cream shop. Beth exclaimed, "I still can't believe it. Out of everyone, you got the EPA. This is the start of everything for you. I mean, I still don't even know what I am going to do after college, but you already have an internship with a government agency. This is huge." Her words rang true.
You know, I just thought,
what?
Is that Jones?
No.
I'm just like, I was just looking at like.
He's too old to be Jones.
Maybe I should give him hair.
Yeah. Her words rang true. This was the beginning for him. He was going to have a chance to obtain a job in a science field. School really wasn't much of a challenge for John. He placed the highest in most of his classes. Science appealed to him mostly because it was the most challenging. Plus, scientists were listened to and respected. He deserved that respect. John drank from a paper cup he had left over from his meal. Well, I'd be lying if I said that I wasn't in shock, but I'm also a lot scared. You're right. This is huge. I hope I impress them. He chewed on the straw from his drink. Beth approached John, taking the cup from his hand. She dropped it in the public trash can they were standing next to. She pulled the straw from John's mouth and kissed him, softly on the lips. As she stepped away, John's eyes stayed closed, and she said, "John, you impress me every day, and I am positive you will do the same for them." John nervously sat in front of a desk. He stared at the empty chair behind the desk. He rehearsed his introduction in his head. He wondered what his new boss would be like. Would he be a fellow scientist? How long would it take before he got a permanent position? John leaned back in his chair, rehearsing a nonchalant conversation, pretending to laugh at a joke he imagined his boss saying. "Hello, John," a voice said, making John jump a little. John turned as an elderly, balding man entered the room and took a seat behind the desk. John rose to his feet and extended a handshake. "Hi, I'm John." Wait, you already said that. "Hello, it's good to meet you." "Thank you for this opportunity," John stammered out. "Hello again, John. My name is Ernie Schwartz." "You can call me Ernie," Ernie responded, shaking John's hand. "I guess you are excited to get started. Why don't you gather your things and follow me?" Wait, Ernie stopped in front of his desk, looked back, and then forward, then back. "Keys, good." He patted his pockets, then his chest. "ID card, check." He paused, raised his hand as to ask a question, then, "Nope, that's everything. Let's go." "Wait, did you get your ID card?" John held his up. "Right here." "Okay, great, let's go." The main building was huge. Huge. It housed hundreds of offices. The energy department was separated into many departments, and Ernie showed them all to him. "Excuse me, Ernie. I was wondering, what is it I will be doing?" "Glad you asked, kid," replied Ernie. "Here we are." They stood outside a door which read, "Power Management and Observation." The room seemed to never end. rows and rows of cubicles, 2 to each desk. There's rows and rows of cubicle, 2 to each cubicle. That's what that should say. 2 to each cubicle, or 2 desks to each cubicle. Yeah. Polite how do you do's and the nice to meet yous were the common greeting John received as Ernie introduced him to everyone. John's tour ended in the basement. Ernie showed him to his new workstation. John sat behind a large bank of computer screens. Here you go, kid. These monitor every power plant source in Liberty. Wind farms, solar farms, and the hydroelectric dam. What's the matter?
I just erased something on the screen. I want to flip the erasing
Stuff off of your screen? Off of your paper. Yep.
That's so stupid.
John's new job was to monitor the screens. The next day, John was thankful when Ernie stopped by. The job had turned out to be mind-numbingly boring. He had been there for 4 hours, and all he had done was daydream about the upcoming life with Beth. He wanted to prove how much of an asset he would be to the community, but how, stuck here, he didn't know. He literally stared at the screens all day. He monitored if there were any problems, and so far, nothing seemed to ever go wrong. Ernie asked, "How are things running?" John just shrugged. "Nothing has really changed." Ernie smiled and responded, "Here, let me show you a few things." Ernie slid in close to John and moved the keyboard a little so he could type. "This system keeps historical data and has recorded the energy output since it went online. So, if you wanted to, you could see how we compare historically to old production methods. Or you could see how over the time as the farm grew, so has the energy output. It also shows which farms produce more. You can compare wind to solar. You can do a lot. Well, anyway, this is where you will be spending most of your time, so you might as well get to know the system," Ernie explained, as he keyed in different reports in the computer. "And if I find any drops," John asked. "You would report them to me," Ernie answered. "What would cause a drop in power?" John inquired. "Well, many different causes. Well, in case of solar, there is a drop at night and during stormy weather. Wind farms, of course, need wind. When the weather calms, we see a drop in the power, and the drop is significant. Energy is best produced when the generators meet a constant speed, and with some of the more traditional methods, it was easy. But nature can't seem to spin the blades at a constant rate. But the beauty of the grid is wind and solar cover each other. In storms, the wind farms produce better, and in turn, weather is calm, solar does better. But I am sure you will see this for yourself. Then in the ace in the hole is our hydroelectric plant. It does best at turning the generators," Ernie concluded. He clicked some keys and the screen returned to the current power outputs. "Anyway, I think you've had enough for the first day. I will see you bright and early tomorrow morning," Ernie said quickly, and he motioned John toward the door. "Sounds good. See you tomorrow," John replied. The next morning, John happily typed away at the keyboard while closely reading the historical charts. He first went back as far as he could and to compare wind and solar to coal power. Coal did produce more power according to the charts, but the impact on the environment was too great, John reminded himself. Next, John looked at the charts comparing wind to solar for the last 5 years. The charts compared 10 wind farms and 10 solar farms. The chart showed fluctuations for all the power farms except for one did not seem to fluctuate. John looked at the computer confused. Later that day, Ernie sat at his desk working. He always had an open door policy, so when the knock came, he didn't bother to look. "Come in," he responded. Hi, Ernie," John said, unsure he was supposed to be there. Ernie looked up, a little shocked. "Kid, what can I do for you?" "Everything is going okay over in PMO?" "Oh, yes, sir," John replied. "Must be important to have made the trip all the way up here," Ernie said with a smile. "Yeah, I'm sure. Well, I was having some fun looking through the old charts and noticed something." "Oh, well, let's see what you've got." Ernie leaned back in his chair as John took a seat. "I was looking at the power farms in a 5-year period of time and noticed this." John pointed at one specific output meter that hadn't changed in 20 years. 94.69. Wow, that's interesting. "And no fluctuations?" Ernie questioned as he massaged his chin. "I know that plant is very consistent, but I didn't realize it was that consistent." "I guess you don't see the things all the time when you deal with them all day. When you deal with them day to day." John stood upright. "That's what I thought too. You've really got something here, kid. Let me show this to my proctor." Ernie laid the paper down on his desk. Ernie stood and led John out the door. Really, kid. Great work." John beamed. He had done it. He had made the difference. An impact. John waved to Ernie as he ran down the hall. The following day, John was looking at a new report showing just one wind farm, Site 84, over a 15-year span. "That's strange," John exclaimed softly. "What's strange?" John turned to see a well-manicured woman, tall, thin, with a stern frame, standing just behind him drinking from a paper coffee shop cup. He jumped a little in his chair. "Sorry I didn't see you there," John stuttered. "What are you looking at?" the proctor asked. "I was looking at..." "Where's Ernie?" "Not here. Go on," the proctor insisted. John shifted in his seat and then turned back to the screens. "These power farms here, this wind one here, are you Ernie's proctor?" He didn't look back. "Don't worry about Ernie. Go on," she exclaimed. 84. See here, the power doesn't fluctuate the same way the others do." "See?" John answered. Proctor put the cup of coffee to her lips. "That is weird," she said, and then took a swig from the cup. "What would cause no fluctuations?" John asked. "I guess that's the million-dollar question." John stared at her, not knowing how to respond. The proctor broke the silence. "You aren't the first to discover this." "Why it does it? We think it's a glitch in the system." "What do you mean?" John asked, puzzled. "Maybe I can figure it out. I found this, and I'm good at it." She looked sternly down at John and stated firmly, "That's not your job. We have others on it." "But," John tried but was cut short. "Let me be clear. Take it out of your mind and just focus on the job before you," the proctor declared. John opened his mouth to object. "John, please don't make me report you. I don't like to repeat myself." "Just do your job. We'll see you later," she concluded.
We definitely need to have an editor.
Why?
I don't know, just
I mean,
just to get
the one
with flow. I think there's still some flow issues there, but other than that,
no, I think it flows just fine. The thing is when I was one of the things that was kind of funny is most books are written in past tense.
Mm-hmm.
John said, or versus John says.
Right.
But it was funny because all the stuff you added as present tense.
Oh.
And I had to go through and fix all that, and that's just normal everyday stuff. Because I find myself sometimes writing in past tense, and then I'll switch over to present tense for some god awful reason. And it's just weird. Anyway, but yeah. John chewed his food, deep in contemplation. The $1 million question, that phrase kept repeating in his mind. This challenge was finally something he could use to show everyone how good he was. The proctor seemed serious about not investigating any further. But she also did say, the $1 million question. That sounded more like a challenge. He stared down at his fork as he pushed around the broccoli on his plate. John, it's probably some kind of test, Beth exclaimed from across the table. John was always amazed with Beth. It was like she was in his head. Test, John stated as a question. Yeah, maybe they want you to figure it out, Beth explained. John contemplated it for a moment and replied, I don't think so. She sounded pretty serious about not looking into it. John retorted. Well, I guess you should just give up then, Beth stated. John smiled, knowing full well she was using reverse psychology. Yep, I promise I won't look into it, he replied happily. John was surprised how far the drive was out to the wind farm. He exited the freeway and headed for the windmills in the distance. Not surprisingly, there was a tall chain link fence surrounding the entire farm. There was a gate and a small guard shack at the gate. An armed guard exited the shack and approached the car as John came to a stop. Can I help you, sir? John produced his ID badge that hung from his neck and showed it to the soldier. The guard looked at it and handed it back. That's nice, John, is it? But what are you doing here? John took the ID back slowly. I work for the company, and I wanted to see the wind farm. There it is, the soldier presented with a wave of his arm. Oh, I guess I meant I would like a tour, please. The guard nodded. He took John's badge and entered this booth. John could see him on the phone through the window. He began to get nervous even more than before. He looked around for more help, but there was none. That's when John noticed an average-sized white building quite a way out in the middle of the farm. It was all lit up, no windows, no cars outside. All I could make out was a single door. The guard returned to the car window. You are the only person I have ever encountered trying to get a personal tour, let alone at this time of day, Mr. McDonald. This is not a national park. This facility is a vital infrastructure resource. He handed the badge back. John stammered, Oh, yes, of course. It's my job. Yes, of course. It's my job to protect the farm and the electricity it provides to you and the rest of the citizens of Liberty, the soldier proclaimed. John started, but no, John, go home. The soldier pointed back to the road. John reluctantly backed up his car enough to turn around. He sat at the intersection for an extended moment, looked in his rearview mirror, and backed the car up to the shack. The guard looked up and muttered, Christ, now what? Yes, MacDonald, what can I help you with now? John took a deep breath and blurted out, Can you at least answer me one question? The soldier was clearly annoyed at this request. What? John pointed over his shoulder. What's that white building in the middle of the farm? Goodbye, sir, the soldier responded as he turned and walked away. John screamed out the window. No other wind farm has a building like that on it. The soldier turned before entering the guard shack. Thumbed back towards the road John came in on and replied, Fuck off, sir. He then rested his hand on the pistol at his side. John slowly drove out to the road. John drove down the road till he was out of sight of the guard shack. He found a small road around the perimeter of the fence surrounding the wind farm. He was looking for a back gate, but after 10 minutes of driving, he could not see one. He stopped his car and got out. He approached the fence and stared through at the building in the center of the huge farm. He stared intently at the building, looking for any movement. He listened intently, hoping to hear something that would give him a clue to solve the mystery of the building. It just didn't belong on the wind farm, he thought. Maybe it was an office. But he could clearly see there was no windows, just one door. Just a big, square, boring-looking building. He suddenly heard a noise growing louder. It was a hum. Electronic, probably a fan. It grew louder. He recognized the sound. He was sure he had heard it before. But what was it? It was coming from above. John snapped his head skyward. There it was. The drone filmed him from above. Oh shit, John whispered to himself. He turned quickly, heading to his car. As he reached the door handle, John! Shouted a voice from the front of his car. John pulled back, took a couple of half steps, and froze. He felt 8 again, being caught by his mother while sneaking cookies. John looked to see an older man in his 50s smiling at him. The man waved, and the drone flew away. John watched it go past him in the other direction from them. When John lowered his gaze back to earth, another man was standing at the back of the car. This black man was shorter than the older man, but his muscles were clearly visible under the nice suit he wore. His bald head glistened in the twilight. The man moved with such speed and precision, John was off his feet, falling and seeing stars before he knew what had happened. Pain exploded from the back of his head where he had been struck by the bald man. The impact with the ground, a split second later, knocked the wind from his lungs. He was frantically trying to catch his breath. He was in trouble. Yet all they did was stand and watch him struggle in pain. He was scared now, proper scared, not from the beating, but proper scared, but not from the beating, but from who these two must be. John's mind raced. Who are they? Were they from the wind farm or police? All he knew now was he needed to leave as quickly as possible. Get up, John told himself. His arms and legs shook at the task. Cobwebs in his brain made it hard to right himself. John was thrust back to the ground. The bald man now had him pinned, with his foot firmly planted on John's chest. John grabbed his leg and tried to wrestle free. He looked to the older man for help. The gray-haired man just stood there. Jones, have you ever seen a more beautiful night? He asked. The bald Jones shrugged ever so slightly. The tall man continued. You can see all the way to Liberty from here. It's gorgeous. John struggled with Jones's leg again. "Oh, yeah. Mr. McDonald, right? I had almost forgotten about you." He approached John, reaching into his suit pocket. The man reminded John of the way a big cat stalked their prey. Every step a calculated movement. The tall, gray-haired man squatted down next to John. The item from his pocket, a badge. The badge read HELP, and John tried to squeeze out, "Help!" "That's right, John, help. That's what we are here to do. You've met Agent Jones, and I'm Agent Brzezinski." He looked at John's confusion. "Homeland Environmental and Labor Proctor." He flipped the badge closed and placed it in his suit pocket. John loosened his death grip on Jones's leg. John remembered a video recruitment ad for help. It was back when he was deciding which government agency he wanted to work for. It was flooding back to him now. A federal enforcement agency tasked with tracking citizens' carbon footprint abuse, and social credit scores. I don't know. I've never watched The Mandalorian.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I know. It's terrible.
Like it.
It's terrible because I really like what the hell's his name? The director, Jon Favreau, yeah. Anyway, they were the new terrorist watchdogs. The shift of Brzezinski's head was so subtle you would never notice, but Jones complied immediately and lifted his foot from John's chest. John sat up, rubbing his neck and chest. You can't do this to me. I didn't do anything wrong. I'm a citizen in good standing. I'm on a public road. I didn't go over the fence. What did I do wrong?" Brzezinski nodded in agreement. John continued his plea. "I'm an employee at the EPA. I told the guard that, but he wouldn't listen."
Every time he does that, I think of Morpheus looking down at Neo, saying, "You think that's air you're breathing?" That little nod he gives him.
Right.
That's that. That's what I thought of when I wrote that was
Right.
was when he says, "I'm in good standing. I'm on." He's like,
Right.
just agreeing with him like that. Little.
Plus, I'm a citizen in perfect standing. Brzezinski stood up and reached into the side pocket of his suit, paused, and chuckled a genuine laugh. "This guy. I love him, Jones." Jones doesn't acknowledge. Brzezinski continued. "We don't get ones like him very often." John watched as Brzezinski retrieved a handful of pistachios from his pocket, cracked one open, and placed the nut between his front teeth. John looked back and forth. "What is going on?" he starts. Brzezinski interrupted him. "This is a federal building on federal land and staffed by federal workers." It's just a wind farm," John exclaimed. Brzezinski cracked another pistachio and began chewing. "That's right. And we are here to make sure that these mills and building and workers are safe. Did Ernie put you up to this?" Shocked at hearing Ernie's name, John replied, "Ernie? No, I came here on my own." Brzezinski interrupted again. "John, you haven't done anything that you can't fix by just getting back in your car and going home, and forgetting that you ever came here. John, everything is there waiting for you." Brzezinski gestured towards Liberty City. John opened his mouth, but Brzezinski looked directly at him. "John, don't be stupid. Don't ruin your life like Ernie did. John wanted to say something again, but his stomach was in knots and his heart was racing so fast it was hard to hear the man. Now, continued Brzezinski, forget this ever happened. Forget him. Forget Ernie. Go home. Have some apple pie with Beth at the grill tomorrow. See, we should put at Rockets tomorrow. At Rockets tomorrow, and everything will be just fine. John sat motionless. Blah. John sat motionless. Jones finally grabbed John's elbow and stood him up, guided him to his car. Brzezinski opened the door, and Jones, with one hand on John's elbow and the other on his head, lowered him into the driver's seat. Brzezinski shut the door. John looked at the two men, wanting to ask them how they knew about Beth and Rockets. He swallowed hard, opened his mouth, but Brzezinski leaned down into the window, looking at John from the top of his brow and not blinking. Now, Mr. McDonald, pretty please, with sugar on top. Fucking go home. John closed his mouth and started the car. The two men didn't pay him any attention as he pulled away.
I still think that sounds like the same, like the guard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just sounds like I think you had to take it away from the guard.
Yeah, maybe.
And then just let him do it.
Right.
Because the guard,
It takes
the
away.
guard's still a public official.
Well, and it takes away the power of
Brzezinski.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a little bit.
Plus, he's just a guard
Right.
at a guard station. I don't think he would
Necessarily
address-
be that rude, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
John and Beth sat in silence on his bed. Wait a second.
Man, I really want color on this. Gosh, we need a colorist. I don't even know how this is looking, because I'm using this crappy pencil brush that I don't like. And
Okay.
I found this really cool picture this girl did that I wanted to oh, come on, I hate being new to everything.
Right. You have to re-log into everything.
Well,
All of your saved passwords don't
but I'm
mean
using
shit.
Chrome, so I was able to port everything over.
Right.
I mean, I don't, obviously, you never want to just do somebody else's artwork, but check out the coloring on these faces.
Nice.
Lois, she's amazing. But if I could, it's very simple,
Mm-hmm.
but yet I was struggling with it.
Yeah, she's...
If I can figure out how to, that's why the drawing of Brzezinski
Mm-hmm.
that I did,
Right, that one.
that was trying to mimic that a lot. I just didn't go in and clean it up with the nice flowy lines like she had, because I was just not feeling
Right.
the confidence in my flowy lines at the time. But I want to see this now. This scene that this like that,
Right.
because I bet this would look amazing.
So, you changed a little thing here that's... But I can change it verbally here.
What's that?
John slumped in the corner of his room as Beth sat on his bed. There, I corrected it. The story of his trip to the wind farm was a lot to digest. Beth jumped as her phone vibrated in her pocket, breaking the nervous tension. She retrieved the phone to find a new email entitled, "Help John." She hesitated to open it. It says help John see the future. And there's a video attachment, she announced to John. They replayed it several times. It was a segment of a nightly news program, and they were showing a recording from the drone of John at the wind farm. The news anchor labeled him a possible threat to national security. They are calling you an eco-terrorist and saboteur, Beth declared, as her breathing became short and labored. I'll fix it, John hastily said, trying to comfort her. John did not speak. His face asked the question. Beth responded. My family, John. They did this to my family. John retorted. You grew up on a farm. Why would the government care about the middle of nowhere? Beth was mildly insulted by the question. She replied, First, John, fuck you. I'm not some country bumpkin. Second, farms are owned by the state. The government practically lives in your house. They can take away your credit with ease. John shook his head. I'm sorry, Beth. I will fix this. Tears streamed from Beth's eyes. John, there is no fixing this. They can choose to destroy your life whenever they feel like it. I am sorry for suggesting you find an answer. I'm sorry this happened, but most of all, I am sorry I have to leave. John spoke through his tears. Beth, you are my future. Every part of me knows that. I don't have to keep the job at the power company. I can get a different job and just keep a low profile. Beth stood from the bed. I'm sorry, John. You and me both know there is no low profile. I can't live like this anymore. I will escape these bastards. Beth walked out of the room while John continued to cry in the corner. Early the next morning, John went to Beth's house hoping she would be more open to talking things out. He knocked on her apartment door. No answer. He listened for any noise coming from inside. No sound. He knocked louder. No answer. Beth, he said through the door. No answer. He left her apartment building, and as he was opening the car door, he spotted them. They were parked across the street, standing next to their black sedan. Brzezinski and Jones stared at John from across the street. They nodded a hello to him as he slowly got into his car. John started his car and left in a hurry. John headed to Beth's mom's house. Beth's parents had divorced when Beth was young. Beth's father moved away, and Beth continued living with her mom. He knocked on her door, and Beth's mom answered. Hi, John. What can I do for you? Beth's mom asked. Hello, Mrs. Vicente. Is Beth home? John asked in a worried tone. Miss Vicente looked concerned for a moment and then slightly relieved as she responded. Today is school day, John. She's probably at school. John felt dumb for not thinking of that before. He ran to his car. As he opened the door, he heard a familiar humming noise. Looking up, he saw a drone hovering above. It looked like the same one he saw at the wind farm. He wasn't sure if all drones looked the same. He got into his car and raced to school. He sprinted across campus to the science building. He was heading down the hallway when he was stopped by Professor Williams. Stop, John, hold on, the professor said as he held up his hands in front of John. Hi, Professor, John said as he stopped. John, you can't be on campus. John stared at the professor confused and responded, What do you mean? I go to school here. I'm in your class. I work at the Department of Energy. No, John, you used to work for the Department of Energy. They fired you because of criminal trespass? They are calling you a terrorist. You should have been told all of this at work today, Professor Williams responded. I didn't go to work today, John announced. John, you just pissed your life away. Professor Williams replied. Have you seen Beth? John asked. John, I don't think you are listening. I need you to get the hell out of school right now. John pushed his way past the professor and ran to the classroom. He burst into the classroom's door screaming, Beth! The students in the classroom all recoiled in fear as John crashed in. Has anyone seen Beth? John shouted. Nobody in the room responded to him. As he moved closer to them, all of his friends flinched backwards. One of the girls in the front row burst into tears. John backed out of the class and found Professor Williams again. Looking past Professor Williams, he saw two familiar figures enter the hallway. Brzezinski and Jones walked casually down the hall towards John. John sprinted the opposite direction, out of the building. He ran to his car and sped away. John screeched to a stop outside of his apartment building. He dragged himself out of the car and shuffled to his door, completely defeated. The final punch in the gut was a note pinned to his door, a pink piece of paper declaring that John needed to remove himself and his belongings from the apartment in 5 days. His social and environmental credit score was no longer sufficient to remain at this apartment. John yanked the notice off the door and entered the apartment in tears. 2 days, John lay on his bed, staring at the ceiling. He mostly thought of Beth, but his thoughts would inevitably shift to one word. Why? Why are they doing this? What is so important that they are willing to beat me? Why are they willing to destroy my life? What are they protecting? What is in that building? Why doesn't the power output fluctuate? Beth left because they are in your life, and she fears them. How do I get them out of my life? Are all these questions impossible to answer? I can't get them out of my life. Where did Beth go? No one has seen her in days. I can't get Beth back, but I might be able to get the answers to what they are hiding. John spent the next 2 days walking out of the city. He knew his car would be tracked. He left his cell phone at home for the same reason. He slept amongst the homeless population under overpasses, and once out of the city, he slept under the stars on the cold, hard ground. He had finally made it. The fence was in view. He waited until nightfall to make his move. He could not hear any drones as he cut a hole in the fence. He sprinted as quietly as he could toward the building in the center of the farm. Surprisingly, the door was unlocked. He found himself in an empty room. In front of him was a set of elevator doors. John pushed the elevator call button. He heard the elevator coming from far below the room he was in. A bell pinged, and the elevator doors slid open. Brzezinski was standing in the elevator. "I'm disappointed, John," Brzezinski exclaimed. John hesitated, not sure what to do. Brzezinski asked, "Are you getting in?" John walked onto the elevator, and the door shut. The elevator dropped for what seemed like a minute, and finally came to a stop. The door slid open, and Brzezinski gave John an after-you gesture. John stepped out of the elevator and stared down a long hallway leading to the right. He looked at Brzezinski and asked, "What is down here?" Brzezinski motioned for him to continue walking. The hallway ended with a set of double doors. John opened the door. The room on the other side was enormous, a giant underground cavern, and in the center of the cavern a huge building with 3 smokestacks going up into the ceiling of the cavern. Yep. It's a power plant, isn't it? John asked. Brzezinski began. It's beautiful, isn't it? And here is where I need to switch over to the other story that I was working on. Of course it is. Why isn't that going down? There we go. Sorry.
Yeah, we don't have producers to automatically switch that stuff over for us.
Yep. All right. It's a power plant, isn't it? John asked. Brzezinski began. It's beautiful, isn't it? It's coal-fired, and it has produced a lot more energy than the wind turbines on the surface. But why? John began to ask. But he was cut short by Brzezinski as he continued speaking. The city needs power. Are you old enough to remember the rolling blackouts? Are you old enough to remember the riots and the crime and the lack of electricity caused? Hell, our economy is all digital. How do you buy food with no power, no credit? But people would understand, John began to say. You honestly believe that? People were made a promise. Green energy was that promise. No more fossil fuels. If the people found out we were still using them, they would lose faith in the government. They would lose faith in the system, and the system could fall apart. But the size of the wind farms and the sheer number of them, isn't that enough? John asked. Brzezinski shook his head and answered, Do you know the cost of solar and wind power? I'm guessing not. No one ever discusses the upkeep of the turbines, how much it costs to replace the parts. No one discusses the cost to replace the parts on just one of those machines. The solar panels are fragile too. Now that you have seen this plant, I think you've answered the question. This plant provides us with the power we need. John continued to shake his head in disbelief. The people have a right to know, John declared. Brzezinski nodded his head. They might indeed, but it is my job to protect the citizens of this country even from themselves, Brzezinski replied as he reached into his sport coat. John lunged, shoving Brzezinski hard in the chest, and then he turned to run for the door. He felt the arm slam into his throat. His feet shot out from under him, and he slammed to the floor. Once again, he stared up at Brzezinski's partner, Jones. Why kill me? John pleaded. I'm sorry, Mr. McDonald, but it has to be this way, Brzezinski explained as he pulled the pistol from his shoulder holster. You have already destroyed my life. I have no job. I have no school. I have no girlfriend. Hell, I am homeless. What kind of threat do I pose to you? John asked. You know, John, that has to be the best question you've asked so far. What could you possibly do to us, to the United States government? The problem is, the government, in my opinion, and let me be clear, this is just my opinion, the government in many ways is more fragile than the wind farms. There are a lot of people working to keep the system running. That is where Mr. Jones and myself come in. We fix issues in the system. You are under the impression that we destroyed your social standing to make sure you are no longer credible. Who in the hell would listen to you now? You're a criminal, a terrorist. But we didn't do all this to destroy your credibility. We did this so no one will give you a second thought. You mean nothing to no one. Brzezinski concluded as he pointed his pistol down at John. You won't get away with this. My family will come looking for me, John screamed, staring at the barrel of Brzezinski's gun. That's what I will miss about you most, John, as he racked back the hammer of his CZ9. Your sense of humor. Bang.
I think there's so I think that last conversation, that PragerU thing that you sent me,
Right.
and the Trump thing we talked about before,
Mm-hmm.
we have a real opportunity to, as I was watching that Prager thing,
Mm-hmm.
you know what came to my mind? You remember that movie, The Other Guys?
Yeah.
Right, with Mark Wahlberg and Will Ferrell. Well, the best part of that movie is the credits at the end.
Yes and no. Because what's funny is you laugh your ass off through the entire movie,
Uh-huh.
and then you get to that, and it just pisses you off.
Right, but it's just spitting all these facts at you, right? Of blah 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 blah, and you're just like going. The wind just starts sucking out of your sail, right? So, in that conversation with John, why are you going to kill me?
Right.
Utopia is a fickle thing, John.
Right.
We have to maintain a utopia. We looked at what the Soviets went through, and we found that one of the reasons is they couldn't keep the lies from being hidden from their people.
Right.
During the 70s and 80s, they kept on saying to the people, there is no crime. Yet
Right.
they had police departments.
Right. Yeah.
There was no crime. And yet murders happen. There's in fact, bringing up that whole serial killer that was killing people
Right.
might be an interesting thing to bring up. That movie,
I can't remember the name of it.
Tom Hardy did it. It was a
Yeah, but it
fascinating
was a good movie.
But it's like we had to learn from that how to maintain the utopia feeling, because it's almost like how the machines in the Matrix,
Right.
they figured out they couldn't just give you utopia.
Right.
You had to give it yourself, voluntary, blah blah blah, and all that. So there's like this. I don't know. There's a talk there, I think,
Right.
that we could really delve into.
Yeah.
That,
But I didn't want it to necessarily be too long. But
I don't know about too long, but I think there needs to be a lot of meat there, because here's the punchline of the joke, of this whole thing is, why is his question why a bad thing? Because they could just send him back on the street like we talked about before, and he could just roam the streets homeless, and when he tried to tell people, the little computer would come up and say dissident, blah blah blah, credit score 0, and people would just be like, he's an outcast, he's a pariah, you don't talk to him, you don't.
right.
So no matter what he says, that could be true. He could look him somebody straight in the face and say the sky is blue, and they would go, no, it isn't,
Right.
just because of his credit score,
Right. His standing. Yeah.
his standing, right? So they can send them back, but what is their? I thought of that utopia thing. There's just that we just can't have you on the street either.
Right.
Can't have you on the street. Can't have you spilling
Right.
your stuff.
Well, I was trying to model after China.
Right.
I always, you hear about people disappearing in China, and you wonder, were those people, disappeared because they were important or influential? And most of the time, the answer is they were just disappeared because they could be.
You know what might be the answer to John, and I think it might be even coldest. John, it's just the easiest thing to do.
Yeah.
What? John, it's easy.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and later, you could almost get to a point where I don't know if it wasn't John, because John's a perfect example of everybody talks about the scammers that try to take people when they call them for a stock that's just too good to be true, and then they
Right.
lose all their savings.
Right.
Well, I mean, you were
Or you have an uncle in Zimbabwe that you've never heard of.
willing to play the game, right? And so forth and so on. So there's culpability on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
There's got to be a person that they come across that's purely innocent,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the one that just digs in Brzezinski's head or something. Actually, it might be interesting if it digs in Jones's head.
Right.
Well, the utopia, right? And one of the things in the utopia that shouldn't be happening, but it does happen more often, is there's got to be suicides.
Mm-hmm.
And suicide has to be the thing that doesn't exist because we've taken away all your suffering.
Right.
And as it starts to happen more and more, there's got to be... it would be interesting if there was somebody and it happened, and then Jones is the one that breaks, commits suicide, and then Brzezinski's reckoning with that
Right.
might be the thing that cracks him.
Mm-hmm.
And then instead of doing it himself, he could be sitting there with the gun, with the bullet, thinking about it, and have the end of that book just go, why?
Mm-hmm.
That'd be kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just like, well, okay, now it's his turn.
Right.
That'd be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So
Then I have to invent somebody that's scarier than Brzezinski.
there's always something scarier. I mean, just look at the person who just showed the proctor that shows up in Ernie's spot.
Right.
Who the hell is that? I don't know, but
Right.
I mean, that's got to be a little
Mm-hmm.
scary. But the idea that John is writing his fame
Mm-hmm.
and his newfound fortune, he's like, where'd Ernie go? What? Oh, who cares? I'm
Right.
the dude.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the superstar here. Who cares about Ernie anymore?
Right.
type. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of I want. That's why I wrote Ernie that way a little bit, was just because I wanted to show that John isn't just a dupe in this.
Right.
That whole idea when the teacher gives him that plaque and everybody's cheering him in the class, I wanted just a double page spread of that,
Mm-hmm.
no words,
Right.
and I hope people get the idea the same that I did, is that's the moment when that became more important than Beth.
Right.
Or that
Well-
became more important than the other future that he thought he was
Did you ever see Devil's Advocate?
Yeah.
Because that's what
But
that
it's
reminds.
so long ago.
That's what that reminds me of, because at the very end, he ends up killing himself, and then he wakes up and it was all kind of a dream sequence or whatever. But then he goes into trial and he tells them, that he has to quit, and the reporter runs after him and is like, you got to give me your story, you got to give me your story, and that you had this break from and you had this moment of consciousness or whatever, and he's like, fine, I'll do your interview, and then that reporter turns into the devil, and he's like, because he had said it earlier in the movie, vanity is my favorite sin, and he turns back into the devil there, and he says it again. He's like, vanity, it's my favorite sin, and that's what you're saying about John. It was that moment because also in Devil's Advocate, there's a great conversation where he's talking to his dad, the devil, and saying, why'd you do this to, my wife? You tortured her to where she killed herself. And he's like, what did I tell you, John? I told you that you could give up the case and focus all of your attention on her. And what did you say to me? Well, what worries me is that I will give up the case and that I'll go back to her, and then I'll hate her for it because I gave up this thing. And he's like, okay, and he lets him continue with the case. But it's like it was all John's, like he was just caught up in all of that.
Well, right. So he can't make you do things, but he can tempt you along the way.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's
right.
Yeah, you have to sow your own destruction.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that's I like that. And
yeah,
that's classic. And
but actually, when you were saying that we could put a line in there, it's the easiest thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
I actually thought about that, but I was I didn't know how to put it. But that's basically what Brzezinski's saying, is that it's easiest now.
Right. And yeah. But I think, but there needs to be I think. The conversation there, the whole, of course it's a power plant, it's coal burning, but Vice doesn't run on sparkles and rainbows.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that, you know what I mean? I mean, that would be interesting because,
Mm-hmm.
some clever phrasing like that would then show the narrative of what people think
Right.
can happen versus what is the reality.
Right.
And I don't know if a page at the end of or page or two, like it'd be fascinating. A page or two of just like the other guys, where there's just facts.
Mm-hmm.
Just those facts, like from PragerU,
Right.
that they spout at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
This much of this, that much of that. And I follow that.
That's not a bad idea.
I've done that carnivore diet before. There's a guy who does it. And people always say that it's cows farting and all that stuff. And blah blah blah. And that's 3% of the carbon emission. It's
Right.
cows. He goes, it's not the cows. You know what I mean? It's like you think it's this big giant number, but it's not. It's
Right.
very minuscule compared to what. And what is it? Man, it's the fact. It's all this material stuff you want
Mm-hmm.
being made. Not only that, but it's also, Prager talked about it with cleaner or more fossil fuel burning creates cleaner environments. Jordan Peterson was on Rogan's show
Mm-hmm.
talking about that same
Right.
concept about, what the best way to clean up the environment? Make people rich.
Mm-hmm.
Because you stop burning wood
Mm-hmm.
for energy, which is one of the biggest deliverers of
Right.
carbon emissions into the environment.
Yep.
And they talked about that in that too.
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of fascinating. So,
Right.
and I don't know if us just putting a bunch of facts at the end of it is an interesting way of doing it instead of the conversation,
Right.
or there's a way to indirectly put some of that stuff in there.
Well, there's also things that I would like to say in it that are never talked about, but at the same time I don't want the last conversation to sound like I'm preaching, but I do kind of like the idea of putting just doing like the other guys and putting a bunch of facts down. But one of the things that I can't even remember who said it. It might have been Dennis Prager, but he was talking about climate change, and it was the discussion was that man thinks that they honestly believe that they have the power to somehow destroy the earth, when the fact is that the earth has lived longer than man, and if we were to raise the temperature as ever so much, in most cases, like Jordan Peterson says, that's a good thing. That helps plants grow, and that provides food for
Plants means more oxygen.
right, more plants, more oxygen, etc. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but there's hardcore environmentalists that honestly believe that somehow we're going to destroy the earth, and we're just a speck of nothing on this ball that's where man may live its time and die out, and the earth will spin on.
Well, if it gets too hot, then we'll all die off. All the carbon would go down that we make,
Right.
plunging it into an ice age again.
But the thing is I mean,
Start over.
The earth ecosystem itself, is set up in such a way that you produce more carbon dioxide, which is food for plants, and the plants produce oxygen, so the plants will reproduce themselves, make more plants, create more oxygen. And this is one of those arguments that I have with myself, where I'm almost positive that there was a creator. I still argue whether if it's the God that is talked about in the Bible, or if it's just a creator that we don't know the history of. Anyway, but because everything is so well engineered to find that balance,
Right.
Well,
there is something to be said about being a steward over the planet.
right.
I mean, you talk about, well, we need the oxygen in the plants, but if we deforest
Right.
the world,
Right. If we
or
cut down all the
vegetation, then we can wreak a havoc on it that can make it inhospitable for life. Yeah.
right.
So, and it's just amazing how we've talked about this over and over. This, I've said many times that I think a lot of our problems. You talk about whether there is a God or not and everything, but it's amazing how the Bible talks about this struggle for earth between a good side and a bad side, and how one side wants to protect it and the other side wants to destroy it because it was given to them, blah blah blah. And
Right.
and you look at all this fighting that's going on, and we had to break down Christianity's control over things to the point where we got to save the environment because blah 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 and all this stuff, and yet it's counterproductive to or like you know, people are saying we got to save the environment, and you got these Christians out there who are like, the environment's just fine. It's like, well, it's not, because we're cutting down too many trees to build things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a great product over here that we can manufacture, a weed called hemp.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
That
no
we
shit.
can actually press hemp into steel girders,
Yep.
to things that are as strong as steel. We could replace all of our lumber with hemp. It grows anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
People who need work can actually have property and
Right.
and farm hemp
Right, and it grows easily.
easily.
It's like a weed.
And not only, but it doesn't deplete the earth like most plants do.
Right. It can be
And-
made into paper, into cloth, into
But you have
rope.
these staunch, nutty, right, religious
yeah.
people who are just like, that's weed. It's marijuana. No,
It's
it's
like,
not.
no, it's
But
not.
but it looks like it, so we can't have people thinking.
Right.
You know, it's like, and if we have it growing everywhere, then people can grow weed in between, and we wouldn't be able to know who's growing weed and who's not
It's
growing.
like, who
you know.
cares?
But there's just, it's like
Let them smoke pot. Who cares?
this constant struggle of these two sides, and it's like, just if you just did it the way the books tells you to do it, you can look at it and honestly go, oh yeah, we could really save the world
Mm-hmm.
by doing that. We could, and it's just this fascinating mindset between the two. I still believe a lot about that's going on today is still the Crusades going on.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a battle going on between good and evil, and I think that there's quote unquote good people who are trying to, you know, the ends justify the means. So if they can bring about the second coming of Christ by plunging the world into evil,
Maybe.
because they think they're doing the right thing, so then it'll bring
Right.
the salvation, you know, the rapture and everything. But that's
possible.
not, that ends won't just, you know,
Right.
you think you're gonna, oh, you did such a good job, you know. No, you're gonna get spanked and kicked down the line.
Right.
And it's just like the parable with the 10 talents. He's going to take it away from you and give it to somebody else, and you're going to be cast out. It's like, I don't know where there's this weird mindset of these two groups that are struggling to control the world.
Well, it's funny because you just used that word. That's what I was going to bring up. Is I wrote that paper about man's need to control, and I think it's one of our base needs. And I sometimes wonder if that's what all of this is just man's need to control, and unfortunately all men are looking to control things, but they have different opinions,
Oh yeah.
and it's like because it's funny when you talk about war and how all wars start. Most people will point at one thing or another to say, well, this war started for this and this war started for that. But every war, in my opinion, I break it down to all these wars, all these conflicts start where one man, or maybe several men, go and try to impose their will on another group of men and to control them. And that group of men says, fuck no, and then a war starts.
Right.
So it's always that way. I mean,
Well, war back in the day was so. I mean, I almost think a lot of wars were just almost like gang turf wars, almost to the point where
right. But it was
uh,
still one group trying to either take what those people had, or to control what those people had.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it was like resources we're so finite
Right.
that
I mean, hell, we fought over spices, for Christ's sakes.
right. Well, I think that's what I mean. Though, is that like the war, so many of the wars that we fought were just trying to get more wealth
Mm-hmm.
instead of, right now we're fighting these ideological things
Mm-hmm.
that
Yep.
is a whole nother beast. I mean, it's.
Right.
I don't think we've been really up against what's happening right now. Which is
Well, I mean, we're definitely in a cold civil war right now.
right. Well, I like this movie called The Postman.
Right. Even though it kind of sucked.
Most people think it sucks, but I've always looked at it as actually, I think it's a very good movie. I think it has a awesome message in it, and your message about control and whatever. This guy, he's a supremacist.
Mm-hmm.
He's not a racial supremacist,
Mm-hmm.
but the bad guy's a supremacist.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at what's happening right now, and what's happening is exactly the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
We're having an ideological supremacy.
Yes.
It's not a racial supremacy,
Right.
but it is supremacy. It's a segregation
Right.
of us and you
Mm-hmm.
based upon our ideologies.
Yeah.
Ours is more superior than yours.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that movie really highlights what people are willing to do to have that power and keep it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then it also highlights the other side. It highlights the struggle against it.
Right.
It highlights how hard it is to stand up against it.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's that community that he goes to,
Right.
and they don't want to fight. They just give when the guys come, and then it's finally the one guy, the mayor or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
his death staring in his face. Finally, that's when he yells out, "Right, postman, right!" He finally realizes, oh, we waited too long to get on the bandwagon to fight this.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, it's just
One of the things, there's a good movie that I saw that maybe a lot of people here in America didn't see. I'm going to ruin the name because I don't really quite remember it, but it was touted as Korea's Saving Private Ryan. It's called Unguk Gi or something like that. But what it was about was it was a history of the Korean War. And one of the things that I wish they would have explored more in the very beginning of the movie, because the beginning of the movie, it starts and it shows Korea, which there wasn't any big cities or anything back then at that time. I mean, there were certainly big towns, but it wasn't modern in any way. It had more of a Western feel, cowboys and Indian type thing. But all these people were just going about their daily life, farming, selling goods and services and doing all that kind of stuff, eating, etc. And out of the blue, without warning, basically, these people start attacking, killing seemingly everybody else because, everybody looks the same. They're all Korean, and they just start, killing each other, and this army kind of forms and just starts pushing everybody south into the ocean, and they keep on fighting and pushing, and all of these normal everyday Korean citizens, they're just basically fighting to survive. Yet they're still being pushed back further and further and further because they're a bunch of farmers fighting an organized army who's getting support from China. And so they're on the verge of getting wiped off the earth, and luckily America decided to step in and they sent the MacArthur over there. But what's funny to me, bless you.
Oh man.
What I wish in the beginning of that movie is I wish they would have rewound to like a year before, because I would have loved to have heard the arguments that people were having regarding communism versus a free market society, because that's basically what that entire war was about, was
Right.
a bunch of socialists who had turned into communists wanting to take over a country. And I would have, I imagine, I haven't really looked into it, but I imagine that war really started probably years and years before that, and it was like we're having now here in America. It was a Cold War where everybody was arguing and the divide was getting wider and wider. And I sometimes wonder what's going to be the catalyst to where one side says, you know what, we're just going to take over. And they do it physically like that. Because for like for a socialist party or a communist party to take control of a country, it seems to always has to be with the barrel of a gun,
Well, the Nazis did it through elections.
for a while.
Well, but I mean, they got in
Right.
through elections, and then once they were in, then they had control of
Mm-hmm.
everything.
Right. But
And
that's
maintain power at the barrel.
right.
But yeah, so that's that's why you hear people from Prager, you hear Tim Pool, these guys, you hear them talk so sternly and so passionately about these midterm elections and why they're so important.
Mm-hmm.
But growing up, how many of us paid attention to politics? I mean,
It seemed like I didn't really pay attention to anything until I was 18.
yeah, it wasn't, I mean, I learned a couple things in high school, but I still didn't, know who state governor was, representatives, all that type of stuff. Most people just don't pay attention. Like my wife, she never paid attention till the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, she's been paying attention.
Right.
And, it's just a fascinating, we just kind of,
Well.
people just let this stuff go
Mm-hmm.
until it finally affects you.
Well. Yes, affects you, yeah, or scares you.
Right. And I think it's about the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because, affect you, scare you.
Mm-hmm.
That's all about the same thing.
Right. Yeah.
I gotta figure out how to do that pose right. That's gonna be so good. I want him kind of. You seen that guy who leans forward and holds the tablet with both hands?
No, I haven't. They say when you say something like that, if you answer no, I've never seen that, it's you.
It's you. That's funny. Well, I mean, yeah, that's
My picture is still
picture
frozen.
froze again.
My picture is still frozen.
I wonder how long that's been frozen.
I don't know.
You're not important, anyways.
Apparently not.
They kind of go into that in that movie, The Patriot. There's that discussion of, hey, we got to stand up and fight now.
Right.
And they're having pretty much a town hall meeting or state meeting, kind of be like, hey, it's not, I'm not doing that. I'm not, it's
right.
But they really they kind of go into that pretty good there.
Right. And that's one of the.
And that's a perfect example too. There was supposed to be like a third of the people who wanted to break away, a third that were still loyal, then a third of just.
And that's one of the.
I just want to live and not care about either or.
Right. And that's. I wish, Star Wars, the prequels. That's one of the things that I think that they failed at doing, was that first prequel, episode 1. That should have been all about politics and all about how bad people get into power.
Well, how much politics is in it, and people roll their eyes at trade.
Yeah, but I know, but it's.
Those are the distractions that are used to allow people to grab power on the backside. It's the same thing that's happening now with all the race baiting and everything and all that stuff. The COVID, they're using that as a distraction to grab power.
Right.
And
yeah.
So yeah, that movie is actually. It's brilliant. It's kind of like you grew up watching Looney Tunes cartoons, and then you get older and you start realizing, wait, that's all classical music. I mean, not just classical music, but like the classics of the classics.
Right.
You know what I mean? You're like, were they trying to teach me something? You know what I mean?
No.
Well, yeah, no, you're certain, but yeah, you're sitting there watching a cartoon, them doing these things, but you're doing it to classical music. They're almost teaching you to, to enjoy the something, while you don't know what's happening to you. It's just. I mean that's what our book is. It should be teaching you without you knowing. You're just having an entertaining ride on this little short story, but you're come out at the end of it, you're supposed to be like, oh, I think I've gleaned something in my younger years reading this.
Right.
But harkening back to that's why maybe bringing things up like presenting a cast off statement. We learned from the Soviets in the 80s. You have to maintain the utopia, but you got to do it in a way that isn't a complete lie. I mean, you had to vote for the the Green Deal. He could even ask John, how would you how do you propose if you looked at the charts? How do we run 500 gigawatts on let's take a couple football stadiums, a couple clubs, that stupid sign, all the power, whatever that. It's like Prager on that thing talked about the amount of batteries it take us 500 years to build, to manufacture the amount of batteries it takes to power the country for one day, right? It's a perfect thing for Brzezinski to ask John.
Right.
How do we do that, John? Well, what do you mean? It's the same question that Tim goes on. So what are you going to do when there's food shortages? I'm going to go to the store. What do you mean you're going to go to the store? Yeah, there's food at the store. I'll just go down and get food at the store. No. Somebody has to bring that to the store.
Right.
What do you mean? The food's at the store.
Mm-hmm.
No. Not only does a stock boy have to take it from the warehouse, put it on the shelf, but a truck driver has to bring it to the warehouse. Somebody at a processing plant has to package it to give it to the truck driver. Somebody has to pick it to give it to the to process. Somebody has to grow it to give it for the picker. There's this supply chain
that we've destroyed.
John, where do you get the energy from? Well, it's green. The nature gives it to us. Can you imagine that look? Nature just gives it to us, huh, John? You saw the charts, John. Does it give it to us? Well, it gives us a lot. It gives us a good amount. Yeah, you're right. And we harness as much of it as we can. But your appetites are a lot higher than that, aren't they, John? Well, it's just like, that might be an interesting conversation.
Yeah. That would be another way to, because battery life only lasts so long, and then we take these batteries and we dispose them, and it just creates toxic waste. It'd be kind of fun to show John.
I've wondered about that. I don't know. I don't know the research on it. I haven't taken the time to look at it. Are Tesla batteries recyclable?
Right.
In the form of how long does it take to break down? Would they seek in? Does it battery corrosive acids seek into the ground? Does it destroy water? Another
thing I need to read up on, because I'm not really 100% sure of the of how much of this stuff we have, is I need to know more about lithium.
Yeah, how much lithium's actually out there? Well,
yeah.
The one thing that they in there, they brought up 5 or 6 different precious metals that have to be mined to create the batteries. Well, the one that they didn't talk about that we know is a shortage is copper.
Right.
It was there on the list, and they didn't even bother talking about that one. I mean, that stuff gets sniped off of trucks, gets sniped out of new homes.
Yeah.
And if you want to see what mining copper does to the landscape, just come out to Caldecott.
Right.
And see what that looks like.
Kennecott.
A cot.
Yeah, it's
and that is, you talk about scorching the earth.
You can see that from space.
That doesn't surprise me.
That giant hole.
And it is giant. I mean, and technically you can't see it from
the ground.
You wouldn't know it's over there.
It looks like a really weird mountain.
Right. You wouldn't know it's over there. But man, when you see it from the top down, you just, wow.
Yep.
And the amount of ramping up that has to be done to make all that stuff. Johnny Mnemonic was a great little movie too. Johnny Mnemonic talked about what happens to all the electronics that everybody just replaces and that we can't recycle fast enough. There was just heaps and heaps of just electronics, these mounds out there that were just a fascinating thing that, and you still had your high society functioning, and people were still just, going about their business. And it's amazing because humans will do that. We'll just adapt.
Well, that's just it. I mean, man's, as far as waste removal, meaning anything that we consider trash, is from the dawn of time, our way of removing waste is just to find a place to stick it. You know?
Right.
It's like, okay, well, we don't want it close to us, so see that island way over there? Just stick it on that island.
Right.
Or, I mean, some stuff we try and burn, but you can't burn everything.
Let's just send it to the sun.
Right. But yeah, but that seems to be the answer that man always has. I mean, hell, that's one of the things that, what's that company that owns the Delta Center now? It's not the Delta Center that the Jazz play at. It's called
Vivint?
Yeah, but wasn't it named after? Wasn't there a energy company that was?
Oh yeah.
But anyway,
Energy Solutions, wasn't
yeah, Energy Solutions Arena. That's right. And what that is their entire job is to go to where we dump our waste in Utah, which is in the middle of the desert, and burn it, get rid of it, etc. That's their job. That's what Energy Solutions does. I mean, I guess they recycle some of it too, but I don't know.
It'd be funny if that proved to be the way to put nutrients back into the earth and revitalize the soil. That'd just be a funny. That'd be a funny twist, wouldn't it?
Right. Yeah. And I think the worst thing that man does is takes way too much of this waste and throws it into the ocean.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I'd rather them dig a hole and throw it in a landfill than them take it out on a boat and throw it in the water. Wow. Look at you. You made a picture.
Yeah, I still have some people over here, some back of the, and then that'll be able to show the sound system or the video,
Right, the video
audio
monitors.
video system on the back of the chairs.
Yep. El Presidente.
It's kind of fun. Those people actually kind of came around. I like that's a little bit better. It's not a little more cartoony, a little bit more just. And I wanted that. I wanted this to be more cartoony, so A, that it's easier to draw, and B, so it's not as serious.
Right.
But
it'll also look good when, because one of the things we can do is, I mean, I don't know, I mean, there's editing software, but what would be cool is to start the camera close up on Samantha smiling there, then pull back, and then move the camera from left to right, and kind of get a whole view of as I'm reading, and that way you know,
that's cool.
when we do the video, because
Well, what's interesting is you could start in her, you pull back, and then you fix the camera, but you move the people, so then it's like the train moving.
Right.
Type thing, the train's going.
Right. Right. The bullet trains don't make that noise.
They make a.
Have you ever been on a bullet train? I went on one in Korea, and they make no noise at all.
No noise. Really?
No. I mean, there's a hum, and of course you feel it when it takes off. I mean, there's that initial, speed. It's like, wow. But yeah, once it's going, it's its own little world.
Fun. Cool.
Yeah. Ow, what?
Just trying to move my
Don't
computer.
kick your computer.
Or kick it, just I haven't even taken the screen protector type of
Oh, that plastic film?
off the glass.
You shouldn't. I mean, you have a kid running around here.
That's
You
true.
should leave it on there until the kid accidentally pulls it off.
Oh, that kid. I'm too old for this.
Yeah, well. You're never too old.
They should make men should go through menopause at 30.
Right. So have you done the math to
Shouldn't have to be still producing kids at 90.
have you done the math to figure out how old you're going to be when you
Oh, I did that from day one.
train him to drive a car?
So what?
He's 16, right?
So that's 14 years from now. So 22. So that's 20. Oh, I'll be 50 next week.
Jesus.
So 14. So that's 50, 64.
Nice.
I'll be 64. I think of this stuff because growing up, my dad was old. I would say I was 16 and he was 56.
Jesus.
So even that was old. I always thought that was old. I'd ask him to play catch. I could get maybe 10 throws out of his arm before it was thrashed. And I just didn't get to. We rode bicycles because he could actually ride a bike. So that was an activity that we would do.
Right.
But then as I got better at writing, and we did it through the youth organization, through the church. So since he was the youth leader, he felt that he needed to bring up the rear all the time, make sure that no kid was left behind.
Right.
So as I got better at writing, I was off,
Right.
going, and he was bringing it. So we didn't ride together, except for the first year when I was in the back all the time. 'Cause
Right.
I was slow and old, and not slow and old, but slow and fat,
Right.
and I'd never done it before. And
One of the things I know for sure is it's funny because about a week ago, have you ever heard the term or the condition plantar fasciitis?
yeah,
Well, my feet, started hurting, and it was weird because I've had foot pain in the past from gout, and I discovered, a long time ago that when I gave up high fructose corn syrup, any of the sugary sodas and shit, that my gout went away. And any time that I have fallen off the wagon and taken a drink of soda, the gout will flare back up. But the thing is I was I had this foot pain and I was trying to figure out what the fuck. I mean, I didn't drink anything. Is it just, do I have to avoid sugar altogether now? What the hell is going on? And so I was trying to analyze this stuff, and then I started looking into plantar fasciitis because one of the things that with plantar fasciitis is it's worse in the mornings. When you first wake up and you first take that first step, there's this intense pain that hits you, and as you walk throughout the day, the plantar fascia is just this the tendons that go along the bottom of your feet. It's basically that rough, or not rough skin, but the tendons underneath the skin that go across the bottom of your feet. And when you relax at night, that plantar fascia kind of tightens up. And so when you wake up in the morning and you first step on it, it hurts like hell. And during the day, it stretches out and it feels a little bit better. And, so I started looking into it, and they have all these things, people always recommend, like these huge arch supports and all this different stuff. And when I was looking into that, I was like, okay. And so I was trying to find these products to like massage my feet and all this kind of crap. And then, luckily, on YouTube, I was kept looking up different things about plantar fasciitis, and there was a huge group of self-proclaimed experts that were saying that plantar fascia, the plantar fasciitis, isn't caused by anything to do with the feet anyway. It's because you're not stretching anything else. And what I found out was, I walk all day, at restaurants, and just walk, and running around doing my job, and I never stretch my legs or anything, and I'll go to bed and I'll have slight back pain and stuff like that, and what I found out is now, because I had started exercising, I had started lifting weights, because I built that gym in my backyard, and part of the exercise routine is I'd stretch and stuff before and after. And then when winter hit, I stopped exercising because it's winter and my gym's outside, and so I wasn't stretching anymore, and that was my body's way. That plantar fasciitis thing was my body's way of saying, as an old person, you need to stretch, no matter what. Every fucking morning, stretch. Before you go to bed, stretch. Because I found out that once I was, stretching my legs, trying to do the splits, just doing the bend over and touch your toes type stuff, all of that stuff, when I would do that, the plantar fascia thing just stopped. No more pain.
That's cool.
So it's like, okay. So, I guess it's just, I don't know if you want to say it's God's way of reminding you, as you get older, exercise is no longer just this thing you used to do as a kid for fun. It's required. And stretching is required. I
did insanity for about a week and a half.
Well,
and then I got sick.
It's fucking required, man.
I think I almost got COVID. I don't know.
Cause
Laura thinks I did.
Possible.
This is the first time I've had a fever when I was sick and I don't know how long. I actually recorded a fever. I was 101.
Well,
but
I'm going to say something that probably would 100% get us banned off of YouTube for saying it. I hope you got COVID.
I kind of hope so too, but I don't know.
Because it's so funny. Bringing up Justin Trudeau, motherfucker, was saying all these bad things about these truck drivers that are, honking their horns and, not doing their job. And he's calling them terrorists and all these horrible things. And he's telling them that, they have to go and get this jab, which he got all three. He got the, 2 boosters and the original. And he still got COVID.
Oh, yeah.
And what's funny is nobody says anything about it. It's like, excuse me, sir, why are you mandating something that doesn't work?
Well, that's like I was watching. Oh, you ever watch Russell Brand?
Oh, yeah.
So he was talking about that. He showed a clip that Rachel Maddow had.
Mm-hmm.
When she's like, he was talking about what's misinformation and what's still considered misinformation, and so the fact that he could play the clip means that this information's still out there.
Right.
It's still available, which YouTube hasn't taken down.
Right.
It's misinformation because she says once you get the vaccine,
you can go back to normal life.
Not only are you will never get it. You can't.
Right.
She didn't say. Well, no. She said
can't transmit.
As a matter of factual information,
Yep.
You can't transfer. You can't get it. You know, it's like
Mm-hmm.
it's a lie.
Yes.
You know, and so where's the outrage for that? Nowhere, right?
Well, there's outrage from certain people.
Right.
Yeah. And it's just ridiculous. Speaking of cancel culture and outrage, what did you think of the whole Whoopi Goldberg thing?
Well, you know what's fascinating? I've rolled that around in my head a couple of times.
Because the Whoopi Goldberg thing,
You talk about getting yourself in trouble.
part of me just giggles.
How about this? How about so? Black Lives Matter has been shouting Black Lives Matter for the last
However long, yeah.
couple, 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
And most people's rebuttal to that is all lives matter. And they always say, well, how come you don't care about black on black crime and blah, blah, blah. Well, she just explained it. She just let everybody off the hook. White people no longer have to care about black on black crime.
Right.
You don't have to care about the situations that is perpetuating black on black crime.
Or white
Why?
on white crime, right?
Why? Because it's this them, in her words, doing it to themselves.
Right.
How obtuse.
It's lack of humanity is what she called it.
what? That is racism on a whole new level.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just fascinating because, there's just this whole, well, we can't be racist. What do you mean you can't be racist? I mean, Rwanda tells you black
Yes.
people are racist
Against black people.
against black people.
Right. Because when she said that about, this whole, as she said, white on white crime where these white people were killing these other white people, my immediate response my immediate thought was Rwanda.
Right.
It's like, well, that was a bunch of black people killing other black people.
Well, not only-
But they they did consider themselves two different races.
And
Just like Hitler considered Jews a completely different race.
you can even go farther than that. Tell a Puerto Rican that they sound like a Dominican.
Right.
Tell a Mexican they sound like a Puerto Rican.
Right.
Tell an Argentinian that their English, that their Spanish is as good as a
Right.
Dominican.
And there's that one. Can't remember the name of that Asian. No, it wasn't an Asian comedian. There was a comedian who was talking to a group of people, and he was talking about that Asians. You have the Chinese, the Koreans, the Japanese, and then you have these South Asians. Like Vietnamese, Thai, etc. And the Koreans, Japanese, Chinese actually look down on all of those other ones,
Mm-hmm.
and consider them like inferior for some reason. And it's just,
Oh yeah.
to me, it's just funny as hell.
Tell yeah, well, you want me?
But
Ask a Korean whether or not
they speak Chinese or Japanese.
that if they speak Japanese.
Right.
Ooh, I watched an artist on Twitch who's Korean.
Mm-hmm.
That was like cussing him out.
Yeah.
He was hot because I think some of the stuff the stuff from Nanking spilled over into Korea, or
Well,
they had their own history of the same type.
Japan occupied Korea at one point.
Yeah, and they were ruthless,
Mm-hmm.
the same way that they were ruthless going through Nanking through
Mm-hmm.
China,
Yep.
and so I mean,
Yeah.
let's get this guy a turtleneck.
But yeah, I mean, but what's fascinating to me, and one of the things that I think is actually makes me feel good, is that no matter how much there's people out there that keep wanting to separate everybody into all these different races and groups. You know, they want to separate everybody out because it's easier to control everybody once they're separate. But one of the things that I'm grateful for is that man, no matter what, over the years, all the years, hundreds and thousands of years that we've been alive, we mix races all the damn time. And, that has always been my solution. I honestly believe that, men should just keep on fucking until there's just one race. But I mean, let's face it, skin color means nothing.
No, it doesn't. But man, that doesn't mean it's gotta go away. I don't know. It's the same. It's the same thing with socialism. Homogeny is homogeny. It's bad no matter what you talk about.
Right. Well, there's always going to be differences in skin pigmentation. Hell, even in your own family, you have differences in skin pigmentation.
But you get to the point where it'd be pretty mocha across the.
Right.
You know what I mean? Then it'd be. Then they're the Borg.
Well, there's also that theory that you see those aliens that come and visit us, the grays or whatever they're called, with the big heads and the eyes and the small bodies. Some people believe that that's us hundreds and thousands of years from now, and that's what we turn into.
Yeah.
Eventually.
Since we no longer need.
Mm-hmm. Don't need upper body strength or anything. Because we live in the metaverse.
That would be the only reason.
It's absolutely possible.
True. Well, that could be a section of the population. Now, there's that great Star Trek episode where they go to this one planet and they encounter these farmers, and they find out that they came from an advanced civilization who wanted to go back to give up. They believed that that's what was destroying their culture. Mm-hmm. And so they went to this planet and gave up
their technology.
Yeah.
Right.
The same thing with Battlestar Galactica to an extent.
Mm-hmm.
They realized that the Cylons had grown to a point that they came here and started all over again.
Mm-hmm.
From cavemen or from hunter-gatherers.
Mm-hmm.
But,
yeah.
He doesn't look as good, but all of them don't
Well,
have to
I
be
can't
perfect.
tell if he's looking at the iPad or whatever in his hand, or if he's looking at the TV on the back of the chair.
Right.
Could be either.
Could be either.
Mm-hmm.
One thing we do know for sure
But I think this will be
is we don't know all the answers.
We don't have to.
That's why so much of what's going on isn't about finding an ideology and only sticking to it. It's about just here's common sense, or here's just humanity. Live it. Live your brand of it. Just
Right.
be out there.
But the thing is what we have to do is we need to keep the elites from continuing to separate us. We need to regain control of teaching our children. And we need to have honest-to-God conversations that aren't censored.
Right.
Because those are the things that the left seems to have complete control of, and it's working in their favor.
Well, just like what we were talking about with Whoopi,
Mm-hmm.
you know, part of a lot of stuff that you could say that's happening now, you know, because, you know, it's like, well, all lives matter and blah, 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 and this and that. And, you know, it's like, well, all the white people are saying all this stuff now, and they're talking about all blah, 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 blah. It's like, well, you're just now actually starting to feel supposedly what they felt for 400 years, which is probably in a, you know, to a degree, you know, you're being discriminated against, you're being
Right.
Right. put down, blah, blah. You know, and the whole argument that most people say is the whole idea we thought about equality wasn't, we're switching roles. That's not equality. Equality is, well, if something's higher, you bring that up to that level.
Mm-hmm.
That's equality across, you know, where it's, blah, you know.
Right.
So,
But I'm
that supposedly is what we're supposed to be
right.
teaching.
But what they're actually going back to is the left wants to go back to separate but equal, which was a dumb idea when they first said it, because it was the left that said it way back then too. It was a dumb idea back then, and it's a dumb idea now. Segregation needs to continue. You know, I mean, we need to be one. You know, we're a human race.
Oh, segregation
Needs to
needs
to end.
End, yes.
Right.
Right. So that's you know, you're supposed to be trying to raise, you know, and which is fascinating because it's just, you know, it's a form of racism to just assume that you're up above
Right.
and that they need to be raised up to your level.
Mm-hmm.
But most of what a lot of this boils down to is not so much race. It's oh crap, that's what happened. I shouldn't try to do two things at one time. It's class warfare,
Right.
you know,
And the thing is it has always been class
it's
warfare.
always been class warfare.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's another thing that I want to, you know, in the first book that I just read, you get the idea of the class system and the credit system, but you remember what's her name? Yeonmi Park, is that her name? The one that's from North Korea that escaped.
Oh, I don't know.
I think that's her name, Yeonmi
that her
Park.
name?
Yeah, but you know, she's been on Rogan. She's also been on quite a few different shows. But when, you know, I think it was you that told me when she was on, it wasn't Rogan, but it was on some other show when she was talking about how many different class systems there are.
Peterson, yeah, 57.
57 different class systems in North Korea.
Communist Party.
Right, in North Korea. And that's insane.
That's insane.
But that's what I kind of want to have. It's going to reoccur in every story of a town called Liberty, is you're going to see that there's, You know, because it's easier to control people if you separate them out into different groups, and you know, and they have their own little bubble.
Yeah. Well, that's
of close friends.
The utopia comes when you can do that.
Mm-hmm.
When you can create the quote unquote socialism
Mm-hmm.
in a non-hierarchical pattern. And that's hard to do. That's the rub, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even in the church, they believed that there was, the prophet asked God, "When's the second coming?" And he said, "Yeah, nobody knows, but if you can achieve the law of consecration, which is a socialistic thing of to their needs, to each of their." To the,
Marxist,
right? But it's very well in there. It's like everybody just be communally working together to just live. But that saying that lets you know how hard it is to create that type of society, and to do it without any type of power structure, because
right.
I don't know how to do it. I don't understand how to, because like I've said many times in passing, is where I see the biggest flaw comes into, okay, I got a job at a county level job, and now a job comes up for another county job that's less than mine, but it's still a comfortable. You're inside when it's warm. You're inside when it's hot, or cold, hot, blah blah. You're in a nice area. Who gets that job? Do you give it to the best available person? Do you give it to the next person on the list, or do you give it to a family member?
Right.
So that they can have an easier life, and that's what happens, right? Most of the time, it gets shuffled up the line, and these people.
Right. Because this is one of the things that always confused me.
Or in North Korea, the whole thing, who gets the crappy jobs? They were the ones against the revolution.
Right.
It starts from the people who dig out the sewers with their hands, literally unclog the sewers with their hands, up to the chairman.
Right.
Right.
But I mean, these different ranks in a society and stuff. One of the things that confused me when I was first married to, a Korean lady, she would talk about work in Korea and the difference between, the work in this South Korea, but how you couldn't quit a job because or walk out on a job because that news would just spread like wildfire and you'd never be able to get a job, type of thing. Thankfully, we live in a country that's not the size of Utah, and that's because South Korea is about the size of Utah.
Right.
And so you can, there's always finding another job is not hard. But if we go to a system where we have this, credit score, etc., environmental and, social score, that, we'll be able to do that exact same thing, when somebody pisses away a job, they'll be shunned forever.
Well, there's the difference. Once again, how do you create the communal aspect where there is, they need an X over there. I can do that job. I will go do it and provide that to the community.
Right.
Oh, it might not be my chosen field, but I will do that. I will take that responsibility and I go do it. And then that person does theirs, and that person does theirs. And nobody gets more than the other person because they're just communally working, right? Blah, 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 blah. There's a difference between every job has to be fulfilled. So everybody has to have a need, has to have a work. And so you look and you go, we need somebody to sweep poop up over there. Oh, it's you. I don't know if you know, but I'm really good at math. Nope. You're the first person on the list or whatever. You know, you're that job. Oh, okay. You know, you're this, you're that, you're that, you know, and then it comes down to, hey, somebody pooped over on the street over there. You need to clean it up. Well, that's not my job. I can't do that. We have to wait till Joe gets back from to clean the poop up, because that's his job. Nobody else can touch his shovel and broom. But people are stepping in it and slipping and nope, can't. Sorry, just it's Joe's job. You know, and it's the logistical thing that all these people, like Jordan Peterson says, the narcissism to think that you can create the right way of doing it, that you can get all these people in the world to magically just say, I want to do that job.
Right.
The only way you're going to get people to be like that is if they're all drugged out of their brains.
Right.
And don't care about what they're doing. But they still have to, you still have to force them to go do the job. Because if they're that drugged out of their brains, most likely all they're going to do is sit on the couch, surf the internet, or play video games.
I mean,
so how are you going to force them
they're
to
trying,
to go to work?
well, obviously they're trying to train them young. You know, they control the schools and they try to train them young. But one of the things that gives me hope is that there's always in school the bad students, the ones that don't listen, that rebel against the system. You know, those are the ones that grow up and question.
Yeah, but they're breeding that out.
Trying.
They're trying. And yeah, I mean, that's nice and everything, but and then where did you learn that from? It's like that movie Equilibrium. That movie's great. I love that. How long he was afraid of his kid. And then the kid, he finds out the kid wasn't taking his stim, and he's like, well, how long has it been? And they're even worried about that. It's like, and it's fascinating because there's so much of the stuff that's starting to happen now that Alex Jones talked about 15 years ago. I used to listen to. He had a segment that everybody just kind of gloss over. They don't, but some of these things have stuck in my brain. And he was talking about how, I think it was the DOJ was coming in and giving a talk to police department and fire department, a joint thing in this county. And they were talking about, I think, domestic terror threats and things like that, and how to spot it, how to handle them, what you're supposed to do, blah, 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 blah. You know what one of the most fascinating standout things that would trigger your terrorist radar was when you stop somebody and they brought up the Constitution, that they had a constitutional right to be somewhere or do something, that was a warning flag.
Right, that they were domestic terrorists.
And if they carried
a constitution,
a copy of the Constitution on them, on those little booklets,
or like an idiot hung it on their wall like I have at home. Yeah.
Right. That big red flag. Big one. And it's like, that was 15 years ago. That's a throwaway. He talked about 15 years ago, kids coming home with questionnaires asking their parents, do you have energy safe appliances?
Right.
Who cares about that? Well, the Green New Deal does now, don't they?
Yeah.
You know, they were conditioning kids 15 years ago to be Hitler Youth, to spy on their parents, and then to go back and tell authoritative people what their parents were doing wrong.
Right.
And those are the people now who are coming into just thinking as teenagers, who are now looking at the world and saying, oh, they're all bad. And that's how you get a town called Liberty.
Right.
We're going to have a bunch of people that just magically needs the city to happen, have no moral connection to whatever it takes to sustain the city, but just virtuously live in it, and then be willing to do whatever it takes to allow it to be maintained. So allow people like Jones and Brzezinski to roam through it and remove people when needed on a daily, semi-daily basis, whatever. You know, and
Because there's always more people.
right. So I think that's what's so proud about a town called Liberty, though. If we do this right, and we can show these parallels, but I think so much of it comes down to, I don't know how much of it needs to be tongue-in-cheek alluded to or whatever, like that little, I don't know if that little statement about what we learned from the Soviets in the 80s or what, it's just little somethings like that, you know, little truth bombs of,
Right.
what do you mean Soviets in the 80s? Blah, 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 you know?
Well-
so that people actually go and find that
Well,
information.
right. That's one of the things I mean, your idea of doing like at the end of the other guys, you know, just having a bunch of, you know, I mean, I guess it would be just like Crowder. You know, Steven Crowder doesn't do anything unless there's a page of references
Oh, yeah.
at the end of whatever he does.
Right.
And so I think that would be actually a pretty good idea. You know, because I mean, and it is, you know, if our goal is to get people talking, that might be a good way of doing it.
Yeah, and it'd be interesting. We could even just put random facts.
Right.
Like, Stalin killed X amount of people. No, he didn't. Oh, wait, what the heck? You know what I mean? It's just
Right.
little stuff like this. There's just got to be things that we can put at the back of those things that are just, no, until they Google it and they're like, what the bleep? That's not that. Wait a second. That can't be right. I don't know how to address like this stuff, but I saw there was a YouTube video of a guy who's an ex-Soviet. He goes down to some of these protests and he's talking to some communist protesters down at a park at a protest, you know, and they're waving their flags and he asks them a question and they spitting off their Soviet
Talking
rhetoric,
points,
you
yeah.
know, well, that's just the exploitation of the working, blah blah blah, you know, just, you know, and he's like, look, I lived it, I was there, I blah 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 blah, and there's these two guys sitting there. You can see that there's one guy. If you could get him to turn and look at the other guy when he explains something to him, he would be able to look at that guy and go, oh crap, I don't want that guy anywhere near power. But you know, he couldn't. It was like you need to look at them and go, hey, I want you to look at this guy right here when I explain this to you. When your grandma can't go down and get what's it called? A block of cheese. And then she asks her party official, why can't she have her cheese? They're going to send him to shut her up. And look at how excited he is to do it. Look at him. Look at him. Look how excited he is that the idea that he's going to be able to grandma for not going along with the rules. Look at him.
Mm-hmm.
And if he could have done something like that, that guy, because the guy was literally just, the proletariat, you know, the way he was talking was just, he can't wait to be a disciplinarian and just bring down the pain, the shackles on the bourgeoisie. He just, their version of it, which is the quote unquote right, the Republicans.
Right.
That's the new bourgeoisie. And I don't know how to put that in the books. I don't know how we do that right, you know, but it's like these people are just, I've talked about it before way long ago about in the Book of Mormon there was these two groups of people at the end, the Nephites and Lamanites, and they talked about them being bloodthirsty. They just wanted to go to war so bad because all they wanted to do was kill the other person. They thirsted for their blood. And I never even, growing up reading it, it's like, what did that really mean? What did that really mean? Last 10, 15 years, I've stopped watching a lot of cop shows, detective shows. I got tired of seeing just murder every single day. Like you could watch 3 hours every night of detective shows of just solving murder of sadistic people all week long. And then you see people calling for people now just to be gone just because of who they are, what they believe. You know, it's like we are starting to get into that idea of what a bloodthirsty people is, and it's a scary thing. I'm not exactly thrilled about it.
Yeah.
And what's bad is in the book, the quote unquote good guys became the worst.
Right.
And not saying quote unquote good guys as in really they're the bad guys. No. The people that were supposedly the believers in God ended up being even more wicked than the non-believers because they just probably because they got smaller and smaller and smaller and felt like they,
right,
they wanted to be doing worse to the other people, and so
right,
it's very hard to maintain that idea of, well, if we really are gonna bring people to an equality,
right,
of understanding what that equality is and maintaining it. And usually if you just strip the Ten Commandments back to what they are, you strip the Constitution back to what it was, and if you follow those two documents,
right,
it could be quite amazing,
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's just,
but yeah,
but how do we do that?
No.
We got to have we have to have conversations,
right?
And we have to figure out how to have conversation with other people.
You know who I've fallen in love with, and I've told you about him, and you haven't fallen in love with him yet. I listen to more and more. I listen to Jimmy Dore.
Oh, Jimmy Dore. Yeah, I didn't listen to him because
he's a socialist and he freely
Right.
admits it.
Right.
And that's fine.
Just because. Right.
I mean, Joe Rogan's this close to being a fucking
he-
socialist.
Yeah, he is. And I really don't listen to him much. I
Right.
only listen. Like, I didn't even listen to that doctor that was on there. That
God, that was such
The
a good.
COVID guy?
That was such a good conversation.
I
though.
still haven't gone and listened. I did listen. I did see that he had Peterson on.
Well,
his last
now
week.
he's taking all the heat for just those two doctors.
Yeah,
He's taking a shit ton of heat for it.
especially Peterson. I mean, that guy. Because when he tells you things, and it's just like, it's just like with Alex Jones a long time ago. You just kind of want to go, apps, until you sit back and start thinking about some of that stuff, and you're like, oh, son of a bitch.
Right.
You know, and it's, yeah, I don't know. I
But yeah, Jimmy Dore is
but
more and more. He's fantastic. Russell Brand, fantastic. But
I
all
haven't
of these,
listened to Brand
all of
a
these guys,
little bit.
all of these guys are. It's just funny from where they started
From where they
and
started.
where they are now. I mean, Candace Owens is the same thing. Candace Owens was, she wasn't liberal, but she at one point in her life was more on that side than this side.
Yeah. And my problem with Candace,
Colion Noir, same thing.
Colion
He
Noir.
he never even wanted to touch a gun. Now he's the biggest gun right activist there is.
same thing with Colion and Candace. Mm-hmm. The reason I don't listen to them on a regular basis is the same as they get caught up in their rhetoric too. You know, I don't know.
Right.
That's what I like about Rogan to an extent. When I do listen to him, it's what I like about Peterson, and what I like about Tim is, for the most part, they just talk.
Right. They ask genuine questions and they want to learn.
But when like Luke Krakowski was on the show, you could have Tim talking, you have Ian talk his crazy mushroom stuff, but when Luke has to start talking, he has to talk rhetoric in a manner of somebody explaining it to you because you're so stupid to understand, and blah 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 blah, and it's like turned off. And
Well, Luke's not there anymore.
I know, it's such a better show for it. But even still, even the guy that does the Freedom Tunes, you know,
Seamus is awesome.
he can be a little too Catholic at times because he
Yeah.
can just go right into his religious
Stuff. Right.
stuff, and which is fine, you know. And then I do it at times, and but it's how you do it. I think that's because we know that he's not a religious man and so for him to still
Religion,
be friends with me
religion
for as long
is fascinating
for
to
as
me.
long as we have been, should tell you that how I talk about it.
Yeah.
I talk about it in a vastly different manner, I think, than most people
Right.
do.
But yeah, I mean, it's just so funny.
And Dore,
And this is one of the things I want to know about Whoopi. Now,
Oh.
so bringing it back to Whoopi, she said these things, and
with the last name Goldberg,
at first, well, yeah, we can get to her real name here in a second. But what's funny is she said these things, that people, obviously disagreed with, and she got. Because at first, nobody thought she was going to get any heat for it at all. But then, lo and behold, she was suspended from the show for we don't know how long.
2 weeks.
And
It's a 2 week suspension.
and it's like, what I want to know, and this kind of happened to Roseanne, is at one point Roseanne Barr, when she was married to what was his name, that actor, Tom Arnold. When she was married to Tom Arnold is on the Republican side of the spectrum, and she
Used to be.
she went along with him, and his Republican friends. And then when she got divorced from that guy, she did the big switch and was this screaming Democrat and hated everything Republican, et cetera, et cetera. And then what's funny is as soon as she said something that was it was fairly racist. Although I do think it was a mistake that she said it. Anyway, she and she apologized for it, et cetera, et cetera. But it didn't matter. They kicked her out, got rid of her brand new show, and blacklisted her, et cetera, et cetera. And then lo and behold, like 2 weeks later or whatever, she's on Candace Owens show, and and now she's a fucking conservative again. It's like, goddamn. I mean, the one thing that I love about like Jimmy Dore, Joe Rogan, is they really haven't changed, but they're honest enough to tell you that they haven't changed, but they're also honest enough to point out all the hypocrisy that's going on in other people's lives. All the hypocritical shit that the left does, the right does, all of it. They just lay it all out there.
Right. Well,
and it's funny because Jimmy
I
Dore
don't know if Dore does it.
is now being because like Cenk, him and Cenk Uygur or whatever the hell is Uyghur, or I don't even, from the Young Turks, they have this ongoing feud. Because as Jimmy Dore calls Cenk, he's a shit lib. And it's just fascinating to watch these people tear into each other for the stupidest shit. But I guess I just appreciate the ones that are honest.
Yeah, well,
I mean, Jimmy Dore seems like a guy that I could have an honest conversation with and have dinner.
oh, probably. Yeah, I admit that. I guess the thing I don't know, I would question whether he's honest about is you call all this crap out, but then turn around and express more of it. It's like,
Right.
how do you keep down the path you're going,
Mm-hmm.
and then but this is all bad. But it's like when Tim.
Well,
a year ago, I used to complain about this,
Mm-hmm.
that him and Ian used to try to fix bureaucracy with more bureaucracy.
right.
It's like, dumbasses. And that's what Dory does a lot. It's like,
Right.
well, we got to get the bloating out, so we need to create committees to go and look at the bloating.
Right.
Oh, let's create a committee to look at the committee that looks at the committee.
Well, no, like he'll talk about it's funny because you're right because he he'll say on one hand he's like, look at all this wasted money that's going to this and this, and going to like this war that was bullshit, and this thing that was bullshit, and now all these the pharmaceutical companies are getting rich, and and he's like, if we took that money and we gave it to every household, we could people could live on that money that we're wasting over here. And but that's how he talks about it.
Right. It's like the same thing. Let's just, instead of stopping the spending of the money, let's just redirect it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing, Jimmy. No, it's different.
Well, yeah.
But
But the thing is like I said, I think you could have this conversation with Jimmy and he'd be fine.
Mm.
Now, if you tried to have this same fucking conversation with Cenk Uygur, he would call you a fucking idiot all day long.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't have a conversation. You'd have an argument and a fist fight. So, yeah.
Yeah, with Yankee, you have to take that position of you just have to at least get it in once that just because you're talking the loudest doesn't mean you're right.
Right.
It doesn't mean you're winning anything. You can yell over the top of me all you want, but that doesn't.
Right.
Okay, sure, whatever you want, sure, buddy. Oh yeah, you won that. You just got to treat him like the high school shithead in the back that he is.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Grow up and get out of high school.
Mm-hmm.
Well, man, you just don't want to. You're just the same shitbag in the back of the class. just
Making noise, interrupting.
yeah, just shut up and go away.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's my take on a lot of those guys like that. It's just,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a shame he has a show.
man, I can't even do that right.
What do you mean?
How is this? How is this longer than that, and that one's farther away from you? I'm a moron. I can't draw. I can draw. I just can't draft.
Right. Yeah, that chair's
But
a
I'm
little
a
taller.
pretty decent draftsman at times. But you know, it doesn't need to be perfect. It's not going to be perfect. It's just it's there. In fact, I don't even know how much of those guys will even be seen. I don't know how much
Well,
text will be covered up. But
we
will
just
have
need to
put
be
up
able.
here.
We just need to be able to see the TVs. That's it.
Right? Because
Give them the idea of where the sound's coming from.
you know, the talking, we have to make sure that the words are all put up there.
Mm-hmm. So how long have we been talking?
3 hours,
Oh, wow. Pretty good.
almost to the
So
3 hours and 40 seconds.
we need to name drop the people that actually watch the show. Hello, Nick. Let's see here. Who's your cousin or whatever?
No, my nephew,
Nephew.
Mark.
Mark. Hello, Mark. Let's see here. And my kids probably, maybe listen to it. I don't know.
My wife doesn't listen to it, but she does
Post it. I
post
know.
it on Facebook.
Yeah, I know.
Post the link to it. I'm always surprised at that every now and when I see it.
Right. I'll post it and then she'll share my post.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So she does that. But she's not going to listen to us. She always asks us, who'd you guys talk about? And I always just say, same thing we always talk about.
Try to take over the world.
You know, it's funny. It's just like,
What do you want to do tonight, Brain?
I'm not going to
Same
have
thing
another
we do.
3-hour conversation with you about what we just talked about.
Same thing we do every night. Try to take over the world. I miss Pinky and the Brain.
Yeah, it doesn't hold up as much as it should.
No, but it was good when
It
it
was good when,
Yeah.
yes, it was good back then. You know, it's perfect. I've tried to go
Narf.
back and watch it, and it's just like, man. It's the same thing with He-Man.
Oh
I
God.
didn't realize in He-Man how many times they reused the same animation.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, I know.
like him dropping down and running
Mm-hmm.
is like they'll do it like 3 or 4 times in the same episode,
Mm-hmm.
and then the same animation in every episode.
Right.
And it's like
Right.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I know. I
was
mean,
just-
every
I
time,
was just too busy looking at Sorceress and Tila.
every time he does the "I have the power" thing with the sword, I mean that has been used since the first episode all the way through to the very end.
Well, they all do that. You know, it's funny. Anime, every anime does that with like Power Rangers. did it.
Voltron,
Voltron, whenever they bring out the
sword.
they
Mhm.
go through that. And it's like, aren't you in the middle of a fight?
Right.
And they go through the animation. It's like the bad guy sitting back. I wonder what he's doing over there.
Right.
Huh.
The one thing
Sword.
the one thing you could say about Sailor Moon is, they had that type of thing where when she would transform into Sailor
yeah.
Moon, they changed that animation. I guess in some other season or whatever, but yeah, because her transformation animation changed throughout the different seasons, so that was kind of cool.
Oh,
She always had a different pose.
a different pose. Really. I don't think I really ever watched Sailor Moon.
Well, you should marry a Korean, and then you'll have
And
to
then
watch.
you'll have to watch it.
You'll have to watch Sailor Moon, even though it's Japanese animation.
Right. Which is hilarious, right? Because that's what we were talking about with the whole Koreans and the Chinese and hate and all that stuff. And what's one of their biggest industries is animation.
Right. Yeah.
It's just kind of funny. But,
Right.
in fact, I think Sailor Moon was like PG-fied.
Yes.
It was actually very
Yeah. It was more adult.
adult
There.
like naked adult
Mm-hmm.
stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then they made it all
Kid friendly.
kid friendly. Yeah, I think somebody would go back and watch the original, they'd be like
Right.
shocked.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's funny because I mean, in a lot of ways, thanks to that one Toys That Made Us thing on Netflix, I mean, I don't even remember this, but in the original He-Man figures, there was a comic book that came with the figure, and the comic books were bloody as hell.
Oh yeah.
But then when they did the TV show, finally, they PG'd that down to nothing, I mean,
Yeah. Except, I must admit, Sorceress and Tila were women
right,
and drawn like women.
right,
I mean, you grew up understanding what a beautiful woman was.
right.
Not. It's fascinating. In fact, the new cartoon that they did on Netflix, I mean, man, they destroyed Tila.
Why? What'd they do? Take away her
she looks
shape?
like a man.
She's just
She's all
olive
buffed.
oil.
She's all buffed and not like He-Man buff, but
Right.
LGBTQ buffed
Mm.
with half-shaved head,
Mm.
and the cropped over hair, and she is L, she is L.
She's a lesbian?
Yes.
Oh.
And the sorceress is the same. She's been de-womanized like that. She's no longer gorgeous.
Right.
Or feminine. Feminine, I would say, is more accurate. But those two in the original, wow. I mean, as a young kid watching that, you're just like, I can watch this,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
I-
The world we live in.
wow. Amazing how it's such a war. When, Jones, once again, Alex Jones back in, there was a war on for your mind. Yeah, well, right, and he would say all these fantastical things, and you're like, yeah, right. It's like, holy crap. They were just 10 years
Too soon.
too soon.
Mm-hmm.
I remember 10 years ago, they're telling you to buy gold. There's going to be hyperinflation. It costs you $10 for a loaf of bread, blah, blah, blah type of stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
you should buy gold and all that type of stuff. And I was like, yeah, doesn't seem to be happening.
Right.
Once again, 10 years too soon. I don't know. Maybe we still might be 20 years out from that type of inflation, but
Right.
I don't know.
I think bullets, food, and water are important.
Bullets, food, and water, yeah. Stock up on aspirin, right? They
Right.
say that's the number one commodity that's in the book of Eli. Wasn't that the number one? One of the number one things was
Aspirin?
batteries and aspirin, I think.
Mm.
Because it's headaches never go away.
Right.
And you'd be like, man, I'd kill for an aspirin right now.
Wow. Yep. Never thought about it.
Well, yeah, I was explaining that to the guy that came over and helped me build my computer. It's fascinating how many things you think about when you don't have anything, like how much easier life will be
Mm-hmm.
when you get some stuff.
Right.
And then it's always funny because it's like, oh man, gas is so doggone expensive, blah 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 blah. And then you're like, well, then if I get some money, I'm gonna buy a Ferrari. But man, it gets like 6 miles to the gallon. Well, if you can afford the Ferrari, you care less about how much the gas is gonna cost you.
Right.
But you don't transition. You still think in the same
Right.
mindset. It's the same type. I sat on the bus when we had to walk everywhere, and we would
we'd walk to the mall to catch the bus and take it all the way down to where the Winco is.
Mm-hmm.
And I would sit on the bus looking out the window thinking, man, this drive, the way we're, it would be so much better when we get a car,
Right.
when we get the cars working. Blah, blah, it's like, A, I won't be going that route because I won't be following the bus route.
Right.
B, I probably wouldn't be going to Winco because we won't be saving the money. We could go to somewhere closer.
Right.
All these different type of...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know.
So same thing like that. You don't realize what really would be the commodities that you really, really would want.
Yeah.
The power goes out,
Mm-hmm.
and you think, oh, TV's out. Oh, well, I'll just look on Netflix. Because your brain thinks, TV is the cable, right?
Right.
You don't think the streaming is what went out.
Right.
And then you're like, oh, oops. That was like me flicking the eraser shavings off my tablet.
Right.
Have you ever been looking on your computer and you're looking at a picture and then kind of try to look around the corner of it to see if you can see more of it, the picture?
Yeah.
I'm like, well, that was really, that felt smart.
Right. Yeah.
Boy, all right.
Eh.
It's only 7:30.
Well, anyway, let's see here. Burnoutstudios.com.
Like, comment, subscribe, tell a friend.
Yeah. We're going to hopefully get this thing done, and like I said, we're going to try and make another channel where it's just the stories animated. I mean, not like a Simpsons animated, more like an audio book that moves.
Well, there's this interesting program called Mental. I got it on my tablet, but you can animate with it,
Mm-hmm.
and you animate in layers, just like how we draw on layers here. It's really fascinating. It's like you draw a picture
Mm-hmm.
on a piece of paper,
Mm-hmm.
and then you just put the paper up, and then you can move the camera however you want.
Right.
It's a fascinating little program,
Mm-hmm.
but I can imagine importing these pictures into that.
Right. And just
And-
moving the camera around it.
Right, and then we could just start moving.
Mm-hmm. Like I said, we like on this one scene, as I'm reading it, it starts out. This scene starts out. It says Samantha pressed her face against the window, and then she turns around. She smiles at her parents, and we start on the close up of Samantha there, and back up, and then just kind of move the camera from left to right, and you see the whole scene.
Yeah, and you can even go back out the other side of the train, out the window,
Mm-hmm.
and let it go past you, and you could watch it go down the track type thing, and then go into the city with it,
Mm-hmm.
type of stuff. It'd be
Yep.
kind of fun. But that's when maybe we need
We'll get there.
a second fill-in artist
But the good news is
to help out with some of that stuff.
when we're finished with this, just the words and the pictures, we can still, the first thing is we can turn this into a book.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, this one can be an actual book, but then we do the audio video format online also to promote the book.
Right.
But we'll finally have a product we can sell.
Right. Hopefully, we'll be able to market it through stuff like
Mhm.
the Blaze, the Wire,
Mm-hmm.
Prager,
Yep.
Timcast. Hopefully,
Yeah,
we'll be able to
because
leverage all of them.
believe me, the world needs more voices. Man.
Yeah. All right.
Anyway,
Thanks.
burnoutstudios.com.
If you're still here,
And
you're crazy.
sorry we don't really update it much.
Yeah, we don't update it much. We're not the best at doing this on a regular basis.
Right.
We try, but he works a lot,
Right.
and the restaurant business is tough to keep
People.
And
Yes.
I've been sick.
Well,
I've been sick.
Let me catch you up
I've
on
been
some
sick
stuff.
as many times in the last 3 months as months. I mean, I've been sick. That's put me down for at least a couple weeks each month. It's been bad.
Well, what's funny is let me catch you up on stuff that's going in the restaurant industry because this relates to all of the stuff that's going on in the world. I place food orders every day, or every Tuesdays or Mondays and Thursdays.
Supply chain.
And it used to be when I'd order stuff from Cisco,
Oh, yeah.
you'd have like 40 items that you order, and maybe 1, 2, or 3 of them would be out of stock, and you'd have to substitute something out for it. They didn't have the chicken tenders that you normally like. But now, when we order from products from Cisco, half of your order of the 40 items, 20 of them will be out of stock, and you'll have to try and go through and get substitutes for them, and you can't get substitutions for some things because, believe it or not, for the last 2 weeks we've been out of Pepsi. Not the Pepsi in a bottle, but the Pepsi in the bag thing that connects to the fountain, and we can't get Pepsi, for Christ's sakes. And it's just this never-ending stuff. I mean, drinking straws, because those are probably stuck in the harbor in L.A. And all of these things that are in the supply chain, and then of course the cost of everything has gone up tremendously. And if you go out to restaurants now, because I was noticing it was less than a year ago that I would go to Burger King and I'd order number 1 or whatever, and it would be $11. I mean, that sounds
That's still high.
That's expensive, but now it's $16-17. It's gone up $5 It's just ridiculous. I mean, God. And and then you have Tweedledee in fucking office, and it's like, how can you not blame this on him? I saw this one great T-shirt that somebody was wearing, and it says, "If you voted for Joe Biden, you owe me gas money."
Yeah. Gas money, rent.
Right.
I mean, I just been looking at Zillow, real estate.
Yeah.
We're not owning a home anytime soon.
No, me neither.
The only way
I was this close at one point.
The only way we're ever going to own a home, and a decent one, is this thing has to strike it rich. And this thing has to strike it big.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to have an office,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah.
I would like to have one that's more than just a tiny room
Right.
that's just in the back of a house, or an unfinished, like, older house basement, where the ceiling's like really low, and you're down there with all the spiders and it's cold, and
Right.
it's like I don't want that either.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
I'm looking at $600,000 for 200,000 feet. For 2,000 feet, we're looking at $500,000
Right.
now in this valley. That used to be Bay Area stuff.
Yeah, I know.
Well, that was Bay Area stuff in the 80s.
80s, right?
But I mean, but even still, that was Bay Area pricing. It's like now,
Yeah.
and what was crazy is supposedly the farther you got away with Salt Lake,
Mm-hmm.
the cheaper houses you got. You can go all the way down to Mona now,
Mm-hmm.
and it's still the same price.
Still the same price, yeah.
So you
and-
still have to pay the same price as if you lived in Lehigh,
Mm-hmm.
and commute twice as far.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's basically, there's pockets of neighborhoods that are considered bad neighborhoods, but let me tell all the viewers that are not in state a secret. Utah doesn't really have any bad parts compared to California. I mean,
There's some places in
we
Ogden.
grew up in California. We know what bad is.
There are some places in Ogden.
Well, Ogden,
And-
yeah.
in West Jordan,
Yeah.
Kaysville.
Yeah.
There are some, but not as bad.
It's dirty, but I'm not afraid to walk down the street.
Probably not. Yeah, no. Not like there.
Right.
Man.
I froze again.
Goodness gracious.
I don't know what's going on with that.
I don't know if it's the cameras. They're so old.
I don't know if it's
Did I overload the system? But
maybe
I mean,
there's a timer.
it's nice that it's all in.
Did it again?
Wow. Really?
I don't know what it is. But anyway, sorry, that was just a rant I had to go off on because
I've been looking
you know
at real estate and
these food prices and all of this stuff, gas prices, it's not a joke. I mean, you know, when you have Tom Hanks going on TV and telling you how everything's just fine and you don't worry about any of this stuff, it's like, no.
Yeah.
Worry.
It's just fine for the rich. And
Yeah.
That's the other thing. I mean,
He can afford it.
they're just creating a class system again. I thought it's supposed to be utopia, not class
Mm-hmm.
divides. But what do we know?
Mm-hmm.
We're just the dumb working class, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I've been looking at northern Florida, possibly, or southern Alabama. I keep looking at Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
That has, but I don't know if I want to go humid.
Right.
I don't know if I want to leave. I don't want to. But with the little kid, it's hard to have.
Right.
He looks outside the window and all he can see is sunlight. And he wants to go out and play.
Mm-hmm.
It's 20 degrees out there. I'm like, no, we're not going outside. It's too cold. Oh, I see sunlight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it looks just like the other days we go out and play, Dad. I see sunlight.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be nice to have maybe live somewhere where you go out in the wintertime and play easier.
Right. Well, I don't know. I've lived in so many different places. I really like Four Seasons versus
There's 4 seasons, but
versus Phoenix, Arizona.
yeah, I don't like sweltering heat either.
Right.
And
But it's a dry heat.
my brother's in Vegas. My dad and they want me to go there. And
Fuck that.
I don't really want to go to Vegas.
My sister lives there too, and I don't.
We've thought about Cedar City, but that's snow too.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah. No.
But man, you get to the point now where, unless this goes,
Mm-hmm.
what are we gonna do? We couldn't even rent a 3-bedroom home.
Right.
I don't think we could rent a 2-bedroom home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In fact, we're worried about them. They've been shopping this place around. We're worried about them selling this, and then they come in and want to kick us out
Mm-hmm.
and rent it higher. They'll have to do a lot of work to it,
Right.
but even still, it's like we're screwed.
Mm-hmm. But yeah. I don't know. But yeah, the price thing is definitely a warning. There's change coming.
There's New Hampshire. Golly, that is weird.
Yeah,
Like I said, I don't know if it's the camera technology or if it's just my computer
Don't know.
having a problem with it. We have to pay attention to it more. But I think you were moving most of the time.
Well, yeah. I mean, as long as I can hear my voice. Anyway,
All right.
we said goodbye 7,000 times, but we'll say it again.
You said it 20 minutes ago.
Well,
All right.
goodbye.